Ladies and gentlemen, let us all rise for the arrival of the Honorable Senate President and the Senators of the Republic of the Philippines.
The sixth session of the Senate in the third regular session of the 17th Congress is hereby called to order. Let us bow our heads for a 1 minute of silent prayer. Father, Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you. The Secretary will please call the roll.
Roll call of members, the Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, De Lima, Drilon, Ejercito, Escudero, Gatchalian, Gordon, Onasan, Ontiveros, Lacson, Legarda, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Pimentel, Poe, Recto, Trillanes, Villanueva, Villar, Zubiri, Senate President Soto III.
Thank you.
With 18 senators present, the chair declares the presence of a quorum.
Mr. President, I move that we dispense with the reading of the journal of the fifth session, Tuesday, July 31, and consider the same as approved.
There is a motion to dispense with the reading of the journal and approval. Any objection? There being none, the motion is approved.
Mr. President, before we move to the reference of business, we'd like to recognize guests of Senator Honasan that are here today, but they're also good friends of ours, of Senator Gordon and myself. Members of the Filipino-Chinese General Chamber of Commerce, headed by our very own chairman, Dr. James D. When I say very own, he's also a member of the Board of Governors of the Red Cross, sir, who's here with us today, together with members of the Filipino-Chinese General Chamber of Commerce, Chairman Mr. Su Haigang, and their group, Mr. President.
We welcome the party of Dr. James D.
He's
to the Senate.
Philanthropist par excellence. Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the reference of business. I so move.
The Secretary will proceed with the reference of business.
Reference of business bills on first reading. Senate number 1897, entitled An Act Providing for the Creation of the Philippine Road Safety Institute under the UP National Center for Transport Studies, introduced by Senator Laila M. De Lima.
Referred to the Committees on Public Services, Education, and Finance.
Senate number 1899, entitled An Act to Further Strengthen the Safety Nets in Acquisition of the Right-of-Way for National Government Infrastructure Projects, amending for the purpose Section 5 of Republic Act number 10752, otherwise known as the Right-of-Way Act, introduced by Senator Emmanuel Manny D. Pacquiao.
Referred to the Committee on Public Works.
Senate number 1900, entitled An Act Instituting Policies for the Protection and Welfare of Caregivers in the Practice of Their Profession, introduced by Senator Sani Angara.
Referred to the Committee on Labor, Employment, and Human Resources Development.
Senate number 1901, entitled An Act Strengthening the Witness Protection, Security, and Benefit Program, amending for the purpose Republic Act Number 6981, otherwise known as the Witness Protection, Security, and Benefit Act, introduced by Senator Sonny Angara.
Referred to the Committees on Justice and Finance.
Resolutions. Senate Concurrent Resolution Number 12, entitled Concurrent Resolution Providing for the Legislative Calendar for the Third Regular Session of the 17th Congress of the Philippines, introduced by Senator Zubiri.
Referred to the Committee on Rules.
PS Resolution Number 810, entitled Resolution Directing the Committee on Labor, Employment, and Human Resources Development and other appropriate Senate committees to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the issues arising from the regularization of employees with a view to address gaps therein through legislation or policy review, introduced by Senator Joel Villanueva.
Referred to the Committee on Labor, Employment, and Human Resources Development.
PS Resolution Number 811, entitled Resolution Congratulating and Commending Senator Laila M. De Lima for being conferred the prestigious Prize for Freedom Award by Liberal International in recognition of her unwavering and steadfast devotion to the dignity and rights of the Filipino people, introduced by Senators Ontiveros, Aquino IV, Pangilinan, Trillanes IV, and Drilon.
Referred to the Committee on Rules.
Committee Report. Committee Report Number 413, prepared and submitted jointly by the Committees on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs, Education, Arts and Culture, and Finance on Senate Number 1898, with Senators Trillanes IV, Villanueva, Escudero, Lacson, and Legarda as authors thereof, entitled An Act Amending Section 66 and 67 of Republic Act Number 6975, otherwise known as the Department of the Interior and Local Government Act of 1990, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes, recommending its approval in substitution of Senate Numbers 574 and 1834, sponsor Senator Lacson.
To the calendar for ordinary business. We have additional reference of business.
Additional reference of business, communications, letters from the Office of the President of the Philippines transmitting to the Senate 2 original copies of the following Republic Acts, which were signed by President Rodrigo Roa Duterte. Republic Act Number 11032, entitled An Act Promoting Ease of Doing Business and Efficient Delivery of Government Services, amending for the purpose Republic Act Number 9485, otherwise known as the Anti-Red Tape Act of 2007, and for other purposes. Republic Act Number 11034, entitled An Act Naming the Bypass Road stretching from Barangay Bengkag, City of Lawag, to Barangay Buyon, Municipality of Bacara, Province of Ilocos Norte, as the Rodolfo G. Fariñas Jr. Bypass Road. Republic Act Number 11034, entitled An Act Institutionalizing the Balik Scientist Program, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes. Republic Act Number 11036, entitled An Act Establishing a National Mental Health Policy.
The Senate Secretary, apparently all these communication or all these Republic Acts contained in the communications from the Office of the President will all be referred to the archives. So might as well just read the Republic Act number to facilitate the proceedings.
Republic Act Number 11043, Republic Act Number 11044, Republic Act 11045, Republic Act 11046, Republic Act Number 11047, Republic Act Number 11048, Republic Act Number 11049, Republic Act 11050, Republic Act Number 11051, Republic Act Number 11052, and Republic Act Number 11053.
To the archives. We have a second additional reference of business.
Second additional reference of business, bills on first reading. Senate Number 1902, entitled An Act Providing for a Comprehensive Hazardous and Radioactive Waste Management, providing penalties for violations thereof and for other purposes, introduced by Senator Maria Lourdes Nancy S. Binay.
Referred to the Committees on Environment, Ways and Means, Health first. Environment, Health, Ways and Means, and Finance.
Senate Number 1903, entitled An Act Increasing the Monthly Age-Old Pension of Senior Veterans amending Republic Act Number 6948 as amended, introduced by Senator Emmanuel Manny D. Pacquiao.
Referred to the Committees on National Defense and Finance.
Resolution, PS Resolution Number 812 entitled Resolution Recognizing the Distinguished Career and Outstanding Contribution to Philippine Public Service of Ombudsman and former Supreme Court Associate Justice Conchita Carpio Morales, introduced by Senator Laila M. De Lima.
Referred to the Committee on Rules. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, we have with us the legislative calendar for the third regular session, already agreed upon by both House of Representatives and us in the Senate. We've consulted with the Majority Floor Leader also of the House of Representatives. And so with the permission of the body, I move to consider Senate Concurrent Resolution Number 12. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, Senate Concurrent Resolution Number 12, consideration is in order.
Before we move forward, Mr. President, maybe give copies to our colleagues. Yes, thank you, ma'am. There she is. Mr. President, may we request the Secretary to read the title of the measure?
The Secretary will read the title of the measure.
Concurrent Resolution Providing for the Legislative Calendar for the Third Regular Session of the 17th Congress of the Philippines.
Mr. President, I move to adopt concurrent resolution number 12, I so move, subject to stand, Mr. President.
Any objection? The chair hears none. Senate Concurrent Resolution Number 12 is hereby approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move to resume consideration on Senate Bill number 1280 under Committee Report number 22. That is the Act amending Batas Pambansa 68 or the Corporation Code of the Philippines, and recognize its sponsor, Senator Frank Dillon.
Any objection? There being none, Senate Bill number 1280 is considered.
Mr. President, the status is we're in the period of amendments, and I believe Senator Frank Dillon has conferred with our dear colleague, Senator Ralph Recto, and they have agreed on, they have an agreement on the amendments, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Majority Leader. Mr. President,
Senator Dillon is recognized.
Mr. President, as the journal of yesterday will show, we have manifested that we will introduce, as we introduce the amendments of this representation and of our colleagues. And all the amendments were accepted and approved by this chamber, except for the amendment on section 177, which is on page 121 of the May 9, 2017 copy of the bill.
I have in my possession amended copy as of July 31. You are referring to an amended copy as of?
As of May 9, but I can quickly look at the copy that the Senate President has and will make the appropriate page. 121. It's on page 121, Your Honor, Mr. President.
Page 121.
You sure? Where's it? Here?
Yes.
It's the same, okay. It's on page 121, sir.
Okay. Page 121.
It's, as we manifested yesterday, this is the only remaining amendment, and we had to await for the presence of Senator Recto. Mr. President, for the record, I called Senator Recto on the phone today, and he has agreed that we just delete the provision that he's objecting to and would raise no objection to the passage of this bill on second reading, considering that all his other amendments have been accepted. So with that, with the permission of the chamber, we would like to read the amendment in order to enable the chamber to approve this measure on second reading, a major measure that is on the floor.
Please do so.
All right. On page 121, line 1, delete the phrase nationality and.
Any objection? Is that a formal motion, Minority Leader?
Sorry?
Is that a formal motion?
Yes, we move for the approval of the amendment.
Any objection to the motion? There being none, amendment is approved.
On the same page, lines 1 to 4, delete the following. Quote, the commission shall determine the nationality of a corporation based on the outstanding capital stock entitled to vote in accordance with the Constitution, comma, jurisprudence, comma, and applicable laws. Close quote. We so move to delete this provision or this sentence.
Yes, and from the word base to vote has already been deleted, you know? Yes.
Yes.
So delete,
delete the whole first paragraph from line 1 to line 4. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is approved.
Still on the same page, line 6, remove the brackets on the phrase pursuant to the duties specified in Article 14.
By Article 14.
Article 14 of the Constitution, comma, the.
Remove the bracket.
Remove the bracket, sir.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is approved.
And delete the word the before the word national. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is approved.
On the same page, lines 7 to 9, delete the phrase, quote, upon the recommendation of the Commission or other appropriate government agencies. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is approved.
So with the approval of these amendments, Mr. President, let me read for the record how Section 177 will now read.
Yes.
Pursuant to the duties specified by Article 14 of the Constitution, the National Economic and Development Authority shall, comma, from time to time, comma, determine if the corporate vehicle has been used by any corporation, comma, business, comma, or industry to frustrate the provisions of this code or applicable laws, and shall submit to Congress, whenever deemed necessary, a report of its findings, comma, including recommendations for their prevention or correction. The Congress may set maximum limits for stock ownership of individuals or groups of individuals related to each other by consanguinity, comma, affinity, comma, or by close business interest in corporations declared to be vested with public interest pursuant to the provisions of this section, or whenever necessary to prevent anti-competitive practices as provided in Republic Act 10667, the, comma, quote, the Philippine Competition Act, close quote, or to implement national economic policies designed to promote general welfare and economic development, as declared in laws, comma, rules and regulations, period. The National Economic Development Authority shall consider the type and nature of the industry, comma, the size of the enterprise, comma, economies of scale, comma, geographic location, comma, extent of Filipino ownership, comma, labor intensity of the activity, comma, export potential, comma, as well as other factors which are germane to the realization and promotion of business and industry, recommending to Congress which corporations, businesses, or industries will be declared vested with public interest, and in formulating proposals for the limitations of stock ownership. With the amendments, that's how sections 177 will now read, Mr. President.
Subject to style because of one or two articles
Yes, sir.
unnecessary remaining.
Yes, sir.
All
Subject
right.
to style.
We
So-
take note of the manifestation.
So with that, Mr. President, there are no further amendments by the committee nor by any member of the chamber, and therefore we move to approve on second reading.
We would like to entertain first a motion to close the period of individual
Mr.
amendments.
President, with
Yes.
the permission of the...
Your Honor.
Yes, please.
Yeah, Mr. President, with no other member wish to add any amendments to the measure, we move to close the period of individual and committee amendments. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, the period of amendments hereby closed.
And I second the motion of the good minority floor leader to approve on second reading Senate Bill number 1280 under committee report number 22. I so move, Mr.
Before the action of the chamber, Mr. President, may I manifest that Senator Cynthia Villar should be made as a co-author of this code. And,
What about the Senate President?
the Senate President, of course. I thought that you were already a co-author. Anyway, just this is a very important measure, Mr. President.
Maybe all members
If there
of the
are
Senate-
no objections from the rest of my colleagues who are present in the hall today, may we invite them to be co-authors of this milestone legislation, Mr. President?
Mr. President, may I
Senator
register to
Objection?
be part of that list, Mr. President?
I see.
As I remember, this representation also participated last year in the deliberation of this particular measure, which will help create more jobs, Mr. President. Thank you.
I thought you were going to object.
Yes. We acknowledge that, Mr. President.
All right.
And let me thank...
So the motion is to approve on second reading. Any objection? The chair hears none. Senate Bill 1280 is hereby approved on second reading.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
To the minority floor leader.
Yes.
And congratulations to the majority leader and the Senate President in 2 weeks' time, in the week or so that you have been installed. You have passed two major pieces of legislation.
Thank you, sir.
Bangsamoro Law and this corporation.
Corporation.
Thank you, kind
Yes,
sir.
Thank
And
you,
it's
sir.
all because of your hard work.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
We move to suspend consideration of the said matter for third reading next week, Mr.
Any objection? There being none, Senate Bill 1280's consideration is suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President. From Corporation Code, we now move to Shabu investigation, Mr. President. I move that we transfer from the calendar of ordinary business to special order. Committee report number, or Senate Resolution number 425 under committee report number 168. I so move, Mr. President.
Consideration of Committee Report 168
Yes, sir.
is the motion, which is contained in Senate Resolution 425. Any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move that we consider Senate Resolution number 425 and ask the Secretary to read the title of the measure.
The Secretary will read the title of the measure.
Senate Resolution number 425, resolution directing the Senate Committee on Accountability of Public Officers and Investigations, Blue Ribbon, to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation into the 6.4 billion worth of Shabu shipment from China on the possible malfeasance, misfeasance, and nonfeasance of Bureau of Customs BOC officials and employees.
Mr. President, I move that we recognize the sponsor, the distinguished gentleman from Subic, the chairman of the Blue Ribbon Committee, no other than Senator Richard Dick Gordon. I so move, Mr. President.
Chairman of the Committee on Accountability of Public Officers and Investigations, Senator Richard Gordon is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, Majority Floor Leader, my dear colleagues. I'm very proud to stand up today to sponsor our committee report. On July 17, last September, this representation filed Senate Proposed Resolution number 425 on the Shabu importation issue, which was referred to your Committee on Accountability of Public Officers and Investigations, better known as the Blue Ribbon Committee. Mr. President, today I'm honored to sponsor Committee Report number 168. Our report exposes the disturbing web of corruption existing in the Bureau of Customs, particularly as it relates to the 6.4 billion pesos worth of Shabu shipment from China. This is a report that should have been done earlier last year, but because of priority bills, we were not able to consider this, Mr. President. It's been hanging in there for a long while, along with other reports. Not to the fault of the Senate, but we have a lot of priority measures that are being undertaken, laws, that is. The Bureau's failure, then headed by ex-Commissioner Nicanor Gabaldon, to guard our country from the entry of smuggled and contraband goods, not to mention their failure to reach their target in the collection of duties and taxes, clearly showed acts of malfeasance, misfeasance, and nonfeasance. While the apparent problem here is corruption, the greater, the more dangerous, the existential threat facing our country here is the continuous and overwhelming proliferation of illegal drugs. Since the new administration came into power, we have been at war against illegal drugs. However, what happened here is so grave, the drugs' unimpeded entry was made possible with the complicity of many at customs and their ilk, people who did not care one whit about our people's welfare, but only had concern about satiating their greed for lucre and mammon. Instead of apprehending the people involved in smuggling, the officials themselves facilitated one way or another this rotten system. For one, former Commissioner Gabaldon was responsible in establishing the ComCEN, or the Command Center, which centralized everything in the Bureau in violation of the Customs Modernization and Tariff Act, CMTA, which allowed such subject only to the approval of the Finance Secretary. He also, with false bravado, assumed responsibility on every grain of Shabu that entered into this country. Next, former Director Neil Estrella of the Customs Intelligence and Investigation Service, with Intelligence Officer Joel Pinawin, botched the raid by conducting a failed controlled delivery, justly raising suspicions that the raid was meant to flop. They even took pictures of Gabaldon and Chen Julong, eventually a suspect, being chummy with each other. It thus cannot be hard to conclude that Mr. Taguba, Mr. Chen, and others who are mentioned in the report acted in concert with each other in order to ensure success of their vile intentions. In this investigation, venality was exposed, which brings us to question how does this corrupt system work. It is an open secret that the Bureau has a systematic corruption which is facilitated by the Green Lane, the infamous TANA system, the recently abolished command center and utilization of harmonized system codes, or HS codes, and the presence of disposable consignees for hire. In this case, the main player, Mark Taguba, had pre-arrangements with import assessment services, customs officials, Pailo Maestracampo, to provide him with HS codes. The codes were then used to log their shipments into the Green Lane by their customs broker, TJ Marceliano. To make their transaction seem legitimate, Taguba pays EMT Trading, Irene Tatad, to be the consignee for hire, close quotes, for a price of 1,500 per container, and thus, once lodged in the Green Lane, the shipment are then released expeditiously and delivered to the warehouse owned by Hong Fei's Chen Julong before the goods are finally delivered to its final consignee. Facilitators also come in handy in the names of Kenneth Dong and Manny Lee, who acted as go-betweens, facilitators, and fixers. In the case, instead of apprehending these people, customs officials facilitated in one way or another this rotten system. After 9 hearings, the committee found the following. People from the Bureau of Customs, led by then Commissioner Nicanor Gabaldon, other customs officials, and private persons have violated various laws and memoranda, particularly A. Republic Act Number 10863, Customs Modernization and Tariff Administration. B. RA Number 9165, the Comprehensive Dangerous Drugs Act of 2002. C. RA Number 3019, Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act. D. Code of Conduct and Ethical Standards, and E. Revised Penal Code, Direct Bribery. F. Revised Penal Code, corruption of public officials. G, PD number 1829, obstruction of apprehension and persecution or prosecutions of criminal offenders. And H, MOA between Customs and PIDEA dated 9 September 2010. Along with these findings, the committee came into a conclusion that, 1, the Green Lane together with the ComSan and the TARA system were all deliberately used and abused repeatedly by players and consignees for hire, and it paved the way for the entry of illegal drugs and other contraband into our borders. As found by the committee, in 2017, the amount of TARA may have amounted to 98.5 billion pesos. Had there been no TARA system and the 98.5 billion costs attached to it, duly collected by the government as part of taxes, the need to collect additional taxes from train would have been reduced by 35.5 billion, which could in turn be offset by honest-to-goodness assessment of cargo, completely obliterating the benchmarking at customs. 2, our country loses billions of pesos in revenue due to the TARA system. It's also been exposed by our colleague Senator Lacson. The lost monies could have funded our military, our social security, our education system, or our housing programs for the poor, or even all of them and more. Finally, the committee has the following recommendations: that the Bureau of Customs be overhauled, including the decentralization of the alert orders. This has already happened since a new commissioner was appointed. The ComSan was abolished, around 38 customs officials were reassigned, and new district collectors were appointed. All this was done after our expose. 2, that criminal and administrative cases be filed and pursued depending on the circumstances and as specified in the report and Senator Lacson's comments and observations dated 11 October 2017 to the following: A, Nicanor Faeldon; B, Neil Estrella; C, Milo Mestacampo; D, Gerardo Gambala; E, Laribert Hilario; F, Mark Taguba; G, Kenneth Dong; H, Chen Long; I, Manny Lee; J, Irene Maitatad; K, TJ Marcelana; and L, Small Abellera. 3, to conduct a study of the feasibility of having pre-shipment inspection reports from the port of origin which shall be furnished to its port of destination, including having the customs to conduct daily monitoring of its total containers and collections per day in relation to its annual target. Pre-shipment inspections were done before and was later on abandoned. We must revisit the process and see whether it could still work from here on. 4, the committee also recommends that Administrative Order number 243A, series of 2009, be amended by the President such that all imported goods, whether containerized or not, and irrespective of value and personal effects, whether re-exported from the Philippines from any neighboring country, shall be liable to mandatory pre-shipment inspection. 5, the strict implementation of the attrition law and the Comprehensive Dangerous Drugs Act of 2002, particularly on the conduct of controlled delivery and the 24/72/24-hour rule in drugs destruction. 6, propose to establish a Customs and Tax Academy in order to train professional customs personnel into a culture of integrity, honesty, and purpose, and to have continuity. In that way, we will not be held hostage by old hands in customs who will simply be transferred or replaced without any viable replacement. 7, there must be periodic reviews of the performances of licensed brokers, as well as summary processes for license suspension or revocation. This without prejudice to the filing of criminal cases when warranted. 8, conduct regulatory compliance checks and tests on the following juridical entities: Hongfei Logistics Philippines, Golden Strike Logistics, EMT Trading, Integrisi Tradings, RO and SS Tradings, all of whom are fronts for the TARA system. 9, request to include Paulo Duterte and Mans Carpio in the lifestyle checks being conducted by the NBI, since personalities who, due to their close relationships with persons possessing high authority, should be held to higher standards of accountability to the people. 10, for law enforcement authorities to accurately identify and further investigate the following: Tita Nani, Jojo Bakud, Jack, asserted Jack, and asserted Noel. 11, and for the customs to issue administrative orders which would include, among others, prohibiting anyone from being within the Bureau and other customs-related premises without a properly authorized identification card worn. There must be a one-stop shop area where all concerns on transactions with the Bureau may be addressed swiftly and officially thereby preventing those seeking appointments with customs officials roaming around the premises. And C, there must not be any direct contact between non-concerned customs officials and importers. I'm pleased to note, Mr. President, that after our committee's investigation, the Bureau of Customs has reached, and if you may look at the board, and even went beyond their revised target of 270 billion for January-June 2018 with 279 billion at 103%. The floor may take a look at the BOC collections from January to June this year, and you can see that they already exceeded their customs targets. I'm also happy to say, Mr. President, that the Office of the Ombudsman, through its fact-finding body, recommended the filing of graft and illegal drug charges against Gabaldon, Maestro Campo, Hilario, and others, after having taken into consideration our report. Also, with regard to Taguba, et al., charges have been filed against them, and they are currently held under custody, i.e. Taguba held at Camp Bagundiwa in Taguig City, Tata detained at the Manila City Jail. However, Mr. President, I'm afraid that this may only be the tip of the iceberg. As discovered in our hearings, the committee only knew about the 6.4 billion Shabu intercepted in Venezuela. But in the course of the investigation, we also found out, to our dismay, that there was another 890 kilograms of Shabu that was seized last December 2016 in San Juan City. Thus, in closing, Mr. President, I would like to say we cannot afford to be complacent today. Now is not the time to be passive and indifferent. We must condemn, as we must always condemn in the strongest terms, the persons and their cohorts responsible for the scourge of death, and swear on the altar of justice that we shall prosecute all guilty parties from here on. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. To give our colleagues time to study the matter, we move to suspend consideration of Senate Resolution number 425. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, Senate Resolution 425's consideration is hereby suspended.
We ask for a 1-minute suspension, Mr. President.
Session is suspended.
Sige na pa, sa dulo ko na lang yung mga local press. Boss, ECCs. SSS. Kaya nandiyan na. SSS. Nandiyan na sila. They're waiting for that. Wait tayo. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, true. Sige, let's do that first. Dave, can you get Dave? Yes. Yes. Okay then yun. Okay then yun. It's an excellent idea. Sir, we can start. Ready to resume, sir.
Session is resumed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move to resume consideration on Senate Bill number 1306. This is an act creating the Philippine Boxing Commission to strengthen the boxing industry and promote the safety and welfare of Filipino boxers and providing funds thereof. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Motion is approved.
Mr. President, the status is we're in the period of interpellation. I believe Senator Drilon would like to give a manifestation, Mr. President.
The Senator Frank Drilon, the Minority Leader, is recognized.
Yes, Mr. President, as the records of the Senate will show, when this bill was called for debates, this representation was the one on the floor, raising questions on the period of interpellation. Upon a review of the provisions and the responses of the good sponsor, Senator Manny Pacquiao, we have decided to close, we manifest that we no longer have any further question. Senator Francis Pangilinan, who is also listed as one of the interpellation, has authorized me to inform the chamber that he will no longer ask questions on the period of interpellation. So with that, Mr. President, there are no longer, from what we know from the minority group, there are no more interpellators. There are no more senators from our group who would want to raise questions on the period of interpellation. I do not know about the majority group, Mr. President.
I will side with the minority leader.
Thank you. We wish to thank the Minority Leader for that manifestation. What can you say, Senator Pacquiao?
Thank you, Mr.
sponsor.
President. Let me thank the Minority Leader, Senator Franklin Drilon, the gentleman from Iloilo, for all the questions he has raised during the extended interpellation. This issue have raised a very helpful in my continuing education, Mr. President. So I really appreciate it, and thank you to our Minority Leader.
Mr. President, I asked the majority leader if there is anyone in the majority who would want to raise questions on the interpellation period. He said they're all waiting for their commemorative watch, Mr. President.
I see.
He
Besides,
was the one who said that, Mr. President, on record, not us.
besides, if any of the members of the majority will ask Senator Pacquiao, we will ask the Sergeant-at-Arms to cut off their microphone. Majority
President,
Leader.
With that arrangement, Mr. President, and I believe they're still working out the amendments, both committee and individual. So we move to just close the period of interpellation and suspend consideration of Senate Bill 1306 to be calendared again first thing Monday morning. I so move, Mr. President.
Motion to close the period of interpellation. Any objection? There being none, motion is approved. And the Senate Bill 1306 consideration is suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move to resume consideration on Senate Bill number 1753 under Committee Report number 300. This is the SSS bill, and recognize the sponsor, Senator Gordon, and to interpolate once against the Minority Floor Leader, Senator Gabaldon. Thank you, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, Senate Bill 1753 is, consideration is in order. Senator Richard Gordon is recognized, and the Minority Leader, Senator Frank Dillon, is recognized to interpolate. Would you like a few minutes? No. Session is suspended. Session is resumed.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes, before the suspension, it is the Majority Leader moved to recognize Senator Gordon.
Yes,
and
I
the
believe
Minority
Senator
Leader,
Dillon is ready, sir.
Senator Dillon, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Majority Leader. Will the gentleman from Zambales, author of the measure, continue to yield the floor for some additional questions on the Senate Bill number 1753?
If it takes forever, Your Honor, I will yield.
No, it will not take forever. It will just take a few months. No,
I
just
would have to
kidding,
miss-
Mr. President. As the gentleman can attest, our interpellations are very, is our effort to clarify the bill and to correct certain obvious unintended errors. And it is along that line that we now take the floor once more on this period. Now, Mr. President, on the basis of the answers of the sponsors on the insurance fund, is it a correct assumption for this representation that the committee will amend at the appropriate time lines 9 to 24 on page 4 and lines 1 and 2 on page 5, referring to the proposed creation of an insurance fund, for the reasons we have stated in the previous session when this matter was discussed?
Yes, Mr. President, I've spoken to my principals here behind me.
Just wanted to confirm that on record, sir.
Yes,
Thank
Your
you
Honor.
very much.
Yes, yes, Your Honor.
Now, on page 5, lines 3 and 4 on reinsurance, is the system engaged in the practice of reinsurance now?
No, Your Honor, we're not. The SSS is not in the practice of reinsurance right now.
All right. And I assume this power to insure or reinsure any of its interest or part thereof with a reputable insurance company is made on the premise that an insurance fund would have been created, and therefore the risk under that insurance fund would have to be reinsured somewhere else. Is that
Yes,
correct?
Yes, Your Honor, that's very correct.
Now, with the agreement that there will be no more insurance fund, lines 3 and 4 on page 5, referring to the power to reinsure, would no longer be necessary and would be deleted at the appropriate time.
Yes, Your Honor, so be deleted.
Tingnan mo, Dick, pinag-aaralan ko ito.
I know, and that's why I earnestly listen, Your Honor. I appreciate I just want to make it a record that it's always interesting to, and certainly
Thank you very
gives
much,
us
sir.
more learning when the Minority Floor Leader
Yes, thank you very much.
makes all these interventions, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir. Now, on the same page, on line 5, I'm sorry, on lines 5 to 11, this is a power to establish a subsidiary or affiliate as it may deem proper in connection with its loan program for its members, which shall be managed separately, etc. What is the purpose of this, Mr. President? Presently, just before that, presently the activities in relation to the loan program is done by in-house personnel. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor. The purpose of this, Your Honor, is to insulate the fund proper from bad debtors, so much so that they're going to create an entity that will absorb this without harming the fund, Your Honor.
Will,
And the law.
will absorb the, what, the assets, or the assets which are the receivables from this loan program? What are they going to absorb?
Bad debts, Your Honor, bad debts. You know, somebody is defaulting, Your Honor, it would be absorbed by this group, and they will be the ones to collect, no longer the main, not the SSS. Di ba?
Is this, in other words, the authority sought here is the authority to engage outside contractors to recover, say, unpaid obligations. Is that right? Is that how it is?
They cannot source it, Your Honor, or they can have an internal mechanism so that the beneficiaries of the fund are not harmed unnecessarily by bad debtors, Mr. President. So the collection of this will be assigned to this entity that will collect the fund, Your Honor, the loans, the bad loans.
I'm sorry, Mr. President, but my impression here is that an affiliate, it is so broadly worded that the affiliate can take over the loan as an asset or can just act as a pure collection agent.
No.
Exactly what does this mean, Mr. President?
Mr. President, I remember now. The idea behind this is to create a fund where instead of borrowing from the SSS, they borrow from this fund, which should be provided for by the SSS, so that the main bulk of the fund is totally insulated from bad debtors. And this will now be more concentrated on making sure that the borrowed funds are paid for and are pursued in case they are not paid for.
So how is this, how will this entity be funded or capitalized? It says establish a subsidiary or affiliate. First, a subsidiary, as we understand it, is under the supervision and control of the Social Security Commission. An affiliate, on the other hand, need not be under the control and supervision. It's just an affiliate. Therefore, we would like to know what is the purpose and what kind of vehicle, what is the setup that is being contemplated. The gentleman sponsor said it can be, my understanding is it can take over the loan program. Does that mean that the assets consisting of receivables will be transferred to this affiliate or subsidiary? To that extent, the capital structure is affected because then the assets are removed from the SSS. So we would like some clarification on what exactly is meant here. Because if it's only the establishment or the referral or the referral to that affiliate or subsidiary of the collection of the loans, that can be done as part of the ordinary corporate powers of the Social Security Commission.
Your Honor, the purpose of this allocation for this special affiliate is to put concentration on the lending and collection. So for all intents and purposes, current loans right now will be still taken care of until it is disposed of or paid for. But in the future, the intention here would be to create a separate entity where they can borrow money from, and where some members can borrow money from, and so they can be pursued in case they don't pay, without, thus insulating the main bulk of the fund for the beneficiaries. That is the intention.
So this, assuming that they put up a subsidiary, the intention is ultimately to remove the loan business, or if you call it business, the loan program of the members and pass it on to the subsidiary.
That's correct, Your Honor, because it's really very, very hard. By experience, a lot of the beneficiaries borrow money and forget the loan for a while. So they would need a special force that will collect this, and this is the agency.
And it will be capitalized by the
SSS,
system,
the-
by the system, the
Yes, Your
SSS.
Honor. Yes, Your Honor.
And
Do we want to put a limit on the capitalization? Is that the next question?
no, Mr. President, I'm still not convinced that this is necessary. So, just to cut short the debate, may we request that we be given a narrative, a paper on what this is all about, so that we can better appreciate what is the intention. We don't have to clutter the record with a lengthy debate on this matter.
Yes, Your Honor. It will be done, and hopefully it will be given to you tomorrow. So that by Monday we will be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed to take questions again.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Just check on the SSS. Now, Mr. President, let us now go to Section 2 of the bill, which seeks to amend Section 8J of Republic Act 1161. Section 8J seeks to define employment as follows. Employment, thus, any service performed by an employee for his employer except, number one, employment purely casual and not for the purpose of the occupation or business of the employer. Can we have examples of this where the employee which are excluded from the definition of employment and therefore not covered by the SSS?
Your Honor, this was done because in the past, the employees of an alien vessel are always excluded from the ambit of the term employment.
I'm sorry, sir?
The employees or the mariners are always excluded as from the term employee. And so they decided now that they're covered by their manning agents, it's no longer necessary for this. So we have removed that category here and put them in the general category of employment, Your Honor.
I'm sorry, sir, but I do not see that that is being deleted. It is being maintained.
No, it's been deleted, Your Honor.
No, it is not. There are no brackets, sir.
It's a bracket.
No, number one. I do not see any bracket in my copy.
No, Your Honor. Number one is not being deleted. It's number two that's being
Yes,
deleted.
and my question, sir, is on number one, sir.
Yes.
The number one says, excluded from the word definition of employment and therefore not covered by this law would be, quote, employment purely casual and not for the purpose of occupation or business of the employer. My question is, since these are being excluded from the coverage of the Social Security system, what are these? What examples can we have on this? Because this is existing, Mr. Sponsor. It's an existing power, existing definition.
These are casual employees that are hired on a temporary or occasional basis, Your Honor. For an example, Pacquiao workers, Your Honor, or Christmas, they add employees, Your Honor.
Mr. President, with all due respect, I think a Pacquiao worker renders service and therefore should be a member of the system.
But not as an
and,
employee, Your Honor. It's
sorry?
not as an employee. They're not regular in that sense. And it's for a piece of work, for example, Your Honor.
Yes, but nevertheless, this is not, this refers to casual employment, not job contracting of an independent contractor. What I'm really driving at is we should cover casual employees. And I think today, I think they're covered because I see no reason why a casual worker who renders services should not be covered by SSS. In the same manner that casual employees in the Senate are covered by the GSIS. Casual employees in the private sector should come under the coverage of the SSS. But under this Section 8J1, they render services which are not considered as employment for purposes of coverage under the Social Security system.
I suppose this is for definition, Your Honor, not exactly for coverage alone. But I guess casuals here refer to, for example, a carpenter hired by a garment factory. A carpenter is not necessarily in the business, but there's a leaking roof, and he's hired just to fix that roof, Your Honor. So they would not be under the coverage of, they would not be within the purview of employment as we speak of, Your Honor.
Strictly speaking, Your Honor, I beg to disagree. These are, as long as they are hired, even a carpenter hired to fix a leaking roof, that is a service rendered to a employer member of the system, which should result in the compulsory coverage of the laborer, especially that this is a social legislation. We should resolve the doubt in favor
Yes, I know.
of the carpenter in that example. I do not know what this, by the way, Mr. President, this is an old law, and maybe it is time that we re-examine this because I do not think that in the present day practices, this would still be valid. Remember, Mr. President, that today there is a lot of debate about ENDO, end of contract. And there is a lot of debate. In fact, Senator Villanueva has filed a committee report which would cover what ostensibly are employees of an independent contractor, and depending on the facts of the issue, they can become employees of the principal employer. But certainly, whether they are in the principal employer or the contractor, they are covered by the system. In this particular definition, they are not covered because the employment is not within the purview of the Social Security system and therefore not covered by the system. That's why I was wondering how this provision is being implemented.
Your Honor, I know where you're going with this, and I agree with you wholeheartedly that casuals, or for that matter, that this is welfare legislation, any doubt should favor the lowly worker, Your Honor. But in this particular case, it partakes of recognizing the fact that an independent contractor, for example, is not in the employ of the employer. He performs a service by virtue of the fact that that is his business, being an independent contractor.
Yes, but the employees of the independent contractor
Yes.
will also be covered
That's
by
correct.
the SSS as an employee of the independent contractor.
That is covered.
Not of the principal employer.
That is covered, Your Honor.
Now, that is why, but this definition is so broad that it can exclude this kind of people. And I have my basic reservations about even temporary or casual employment that can be interpreted as excluded from the coverage of the Social Security system. Maybe what the what the good sponsor can consider is that there must be consistency with the definition of an employer-employee relationship in the labor code and in the SSS, if that is in order, and therefore amend this particular paragraph.
Well, my complaint is I think the definition is not complete by itself, Your Honor, and as you say, we should look at the employer-employee relationship definition, and therefore I have asked them even before you ask the last question to take a look at the definition, Your
Yes.
Honor. So this is something that they will have to take a look at.
Thank you very much. I know that these are matters that maybe was not brought to the attention of your technical staff, and this is an opportunity for them to review it carefully.
In fact, I raised this during when we were reviewing this, Your Honor. The definition may not be totally sufficient, and that's why I'm ready to take a look at it again and request them to get a better definition
All right.
in accordance with the labor code.
Thank you very much, sir.
Kulang yan eh. Your Honor, I have a definition, just for purposes of our edification here. In Conti versus NLRC, the Supreme Court said that there is casual employment where an employee is engaged to perform a job, work, or service, and mind you, it says an employee, is engaged to perform a job, work, or service which is merely incidental to the business of the employer, and such job is for a definite period made known at the time of employment.
So the question is he performing, is he under the state of employment, which will enable the Social Security law to cover him?
That's correct. So the between the service provider and the main employer, it is very clear that the employee is covered in the definition as employees of the service provider.
Anyway, Mr. President, as the gentleman has asserted, we would, the technical staff will go over this and see how it can be improved to remove any doubt, Mr. President. And we're happy with that. We just await the supposed new definition. Mr. President, let's now go to the next page, and this is on the licensed manning agencies. In substance, lines 15 to 20 of the on page 6 would make the licensed manning agencies agents of their principals and considered as employers of sea-based overseas workers for purposes of implementation of the Social Security law. I highlight the phrase licensed manning agencies. If it is not a licensed manning agency, Mr. President, who is the employer? In other words, there are illegal recruiters.
That's correct.
Yeah. So who is the employer?
There is no employer recognized, Your Honor, because he's not licensed. But I think whoever, usurp himself or present himself as a license will be liable, Your Honor. But of course, we need a more stable situation So that's the answer I can give you for the moment, Your Honor.
So, may we spread into the record what is the intention, Mr. President, insofar as sea-based workers illegally recruited by unlicensed manning agencies? Are the unlicensed manning agencies the agents of the principal, so that the unlicensed manning agency, apart from incurring liabilities under the labor code for engaging in illegal recruitment, would he also be liable for violation of the Social Security Act for
If the-
not reporting a covered overseas sea-based OFW?
If the ship owner, Your Honor, hires somebody who's not licensed, he would have to be liable, in my view.
No, sir. He may, the shipping company hires this
Unlicensed.
this sea-based worker. They may be plying routes. They will be plying routes outside of the Philippines. For all you know, the worker, sea-based worker boarded in Hong Kong or in Taipei after having been illegally recruited. So I do not know what is the liability of, that's why we're trying to figure out if they are not covered by this, by the SSS law, so be it. I mean, that's the reality that we face. But we just want to put that on record.
Would the gentleman be comfortable or with the fact that you take out the license? And just
License-
banning agencies na lang?
I think that would solve the problem. We just remove the license there.
Yeah.
If it's a matter of implementation, as long as they are recruited by a manning agency, the manning agency is considered as an agent. If he is not licensed, that's another story. But
Yes,
for
Your Honor.
purposes of the Social Security Commission running after the manning agency, the fact that the manning agency is not licensed should not be a defense.
Yes, Your Honor, that's correct. That's why I proposed that question.
Okay, I have no, I'm open to that kind of an amendment, Mr. President.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Now, the next question is,
In any case, Your Honor, I thank you, because if the court later on has a problem, they can look at the
Yes.
debates here.
yes. Mr. President, are the manning agencies, are the licensed manning agencies and its officials and its employers liable under Section 28 of the law? These are the penal clauses applicable to the employer, meaning failure to remit premiums. The officials of the employer incurs liability under Section 28. Would these liabilities attach to the manning agencies who are considered as employers only for purposes of implementing the labor code, the the SSS law?
Yes, Your Honor, I believe they would be, to further protect the marine, the seaman.
So they are considered as a bona fide independent contractor?
They're considered as an employer, Your Honor. Because everybody would be told now that you should not accept any employment other than through a manning agency, Your Honor. And if that is the case, then if the manning agency reneges, then he is considered as an employer, and he will have to suffer the consequences of his acts, Your Honor.
Yes. However, On lines 17 and 18 and 19 on page 6, referring still to the sea-based overseas Filipino workers, the sea-based workers are employees of the shipping company and are employees of the manning company by fiction of law, only for the purpose of implementing the Social Security Act. They are not technically
The employers.
employers.
That's correct.
That's why they are called manning agencies.
That's right.
And they are not employers, but they are considered by legal fiction
Yes.
as employers only for purposes of enforcing the Social Security Act. Now, the Section 28 is applicable to employers. But the view of the gentleman sponsor, the interpretation is that even under these circumstances, even if the manning agency is not the employer in the real sense, but only by fiction of law, they should be liable for the acts of a real employer.
Your Honor, there's a decided case by the Supreme Court. Unfortunately, it applies to a licensed manning agency.
And
Because you and I are trying to find out who would be criminally liable. The criminal liability here is very clear for the license or the mining agency. But we're now talking about an unlicensed
no,
mining agency.
we're talking about even a licensed manning agency who by under the view expressed by the sponsor, a licensed manning the officers, the officials of the licensed manning agency can be liable for the acts committed by a real employer, although they are an employer only by fiction of law, as they are just agents. But again, these are questions which I would like to be clarified, and whatever is the intention of the good sponsor, we can make it clear in the amendment.
Yes, Your Honor. I believe they would be liable, even in this case, Your Honor, it says that they are clearly liable by virtue of the assent given in the contract of employment signed by the employer and the seafarer.
Kasi po, Mr. President, it's entirely possible that the shipping company where these overseas sea-based workers are rendering services will not remit to the manning agency what is due to employees or group of employees. And therefore, the manning agency cannot remit the SSS premium. Thus the manning agency incur a criminal liability.
Right now, sir, they are being sued already. There are cases that SSS is suing already the manning agencies, Your Honor.
Even if it's a case where they did not receive any funds from the principal employer?
Your Honor, they are signatories of the Maritime Convention, and this is no longer beyond the ambit of contract law because it is based. You want to stay there? You know, sometimes I understand what you're saying, but in any case, as far as I'm concerned, Your Honor, my interpretation and the interpretation of the Honorable the official senator on the sidelines is that they are liable, Your Honor.
1 minute suspension, Mr.
Thank you, Your
President.
Honor.
Sige.
Motion suspended.
Kaya sinabi ko na yun eh. Nasa migrant work.
Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, I believe the good sponsor has an explanation which we should reflect on the record on this particular issue that we are.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you very much, Your Honor. Again, the questions are very precise and actually very good for the record because there will always be doubts later on that or instances that may not have been adequately covered by the written word. And certainly the Supreme Court will take a look at this. And therefore, the answer is they are jointly and severally liable, Your Honor. The principal of the agent, which is the manning agency, are jointly and severally liable. So that in case anything happens, and that is by virtue of the Migrant Workers Law and also pursuant to the Consolidated Labor Maritime Convention, Your Honor.
Okay, we're satisfied with that, Mr. President. Just on another point on so far as the overseas workers are concerned, right now, the coverage of the overseas Philippine workers are on a voluntary basis.
Yes,
Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Honor.
And now, we want to make it compulsory.
Compulsory.
And that, I think that's where the difficulties arise.
Yes.
Because when we, on line 22, it says compulsory self-employed members of the social security system. If this is applied to the OFWs, I find some difficulty accepting it because the law cannot categorize and classify OFWs as self-employed because precisely the overseas Filipino workers are employees. So I cannot understand nor figure out who are compulsory self-employed OFW members of the social security system. There appears to be incongruity because you are a compulsory member, but you have no compulsory employer covered.
Your Honor, we have a proposed amendment here,
Okay.
and it would read, and considered in the same manner as self-employed persons under such rules and regulations that the Commission shall prescribe.
Well, I have reservations about that. I would rather make it voluntary until a labor agreement is signed wherein we bind the receiving state that the employees, that the employer of the OFW is compulsorily covered. In other words, there should be a treaty, so that pending the treaty, it's voluntary in nature. Because, sir, you know, the implementation of this self-contradicting compulsory self-employed overseas Filipino worker gives rise to a lot of difficulties and misinterpretation. But I understand the desire of our of the Social Security Commission to improve the fund being managed and to increase the life of the fund, which really I accept that to be valid. But resorting to this kind of a system of a compulsory self-employed overseas Filipino worker is something that is a little difficult to accept and understand, because if in our Philippine in a different situation, self-employed individuals cannot be compulsorily covered. if you are a self-employed person earning your own livelihood through your own means, you are not you cannot be compulsorily covered, but you are allowed to become a member through a voluntary system. I would strongly propose that the membership of the overseas Filipino workers be voluntary until labor agreements can be signed wherein the employers will be compulsorily covered if they hire Filipino workers. That is our submission, Mr. President, because otherwise we will have a lot of difficulties. And Mr. President, you compulsorily cover a overseas Filipino worker, you get a premium for what, I think I recall, a month's premium or whatever, a year's premium. And then after that, wala na po. So I would submit to the good sponsor an amendment which would make membership voluntary until labor agreements can be signed, authorize the SSA Commission to allocate funds for the campaign to increase the membership base of overseas Filipino workers, but to make it compulsory without any employer compulsorily covered is a little incongruous, Mr. President. That is our view that we want to spread it to the record.
Your Honor, the view is well thought out, but let me just take a little position here, if I may. Your Honor, it is self-evident, and I think it is a wish that it is something devoutly to be wished. Considering the empirical data before us, that self-employed workers in this country are very, very low in terms of actual registration. That is why this is a landmark law, a game changer, if you will, pursuant also to the fact that under Section 9A, there is already compulsory coverage of the self-employed, Your Honor. And it starts with all self-employed professionals under Section 1 of that, Section 9A. But under the circulars now that have been presented, Your Honor, by the SSS, all self-employed individuals, regardless of business, trade, profession, or whatever, are covered, Your Honor. And this is precisely pursuant to the constitutional provision that the state shall afford full protection to all laborers and workers of our country, as well as the International Convention on the Declaration of Human Rights, Your Honor. Now, of course, there are human beings here in the world that will not apply those provisions because that is their culture. As we all know, both of us know that our people are not considered as employees, particularly the domestics in Saudi Arabia and the Middle East. They are not held as workers, and so they do not consider that. That is why I said earlier that there are only 13 states that have agreed to have a treaty with us to cover all workers, but that should not stop us. Today we have 13, tomorrow we have 15, Your Honor. Tomorrow, the next day we may have 17. And of course, that should not stop the Department of Foreign Affairs and our DOLE and all of us when we go to, let's say, IPO, that we should always bring this advocacy, that we should protect all workers of the world, and that we should unite with them to finally get their liberation from this exploitative and culturally punishing philosophy of some countries that promotes exclusion rather than inclusion, Your Honor. And so therefore, Your Honor, I would just want to say that this will give a chance to all workers. It's a game changer, and this will provide protection. And it's not just because we want to fatten the collections of the Commission. After all, a fattened collection, Your Honor, provided the directors or commissioners of the SSS are not fattened themselves. A fattened funding will mean more retirement. Your Honor, we have to embrace, at least try anyway, to embrace all the workers of the Filipino nation, wherever they may be. This is good for them, and that is why, as I said several times here, siguro they will right away say, yes, we want to have retirement, and some of them will immediately proceed. And the problem here is enforcement, or for that matter, coming out with a very good focus mechanism na matutulungan natin yung mga worker abroad. So talaga ang intention po nito ay talagang ika nga, panagutan na natin na kung nakalagay sa saligang batas natin na dapat protection ng lahat ang magagawa saan man lugar sila naroon, ay dapat sundan natin yan. At kung tayo ay sumusunod sa ating pinirmahan na International Convention of Universal Rights, ay dapat talaga mabigyan ng pagkakataon na maproteksyonan natin yung ating mga kababayan na nandun abroad. So, kung voluntary members lang ho yung OFW, habang buhay ganun yan. Kanina pinag-uusapan po natin yung na-exploit na mayayaman ng mga manning agent, ng mga employers, yung mga shipping owners. Ito naman, ang na-exploit yung pinakamaliit. And therefore, nakakahiya tayo pagka tayong gobyerno natin ay palagi na lang export ng laborers, tapos hindi naman natin bibigyan ng proteksyon. At ang proteksyon magagaling rin sa lakas ng sariling worker. At palakasan na lang ng loob, kung sakasakaling tayo ay napilitan at talagang sinasabi na natin wherever we are, na dapat, whether in IPO, whether in the Red Cross, which I do, by the way, in all the conventions of the Red Cross, I've spoken for the migrant worker, or in the IPO, or in the United Nations, or in the legislatures of the world, sabihin natin na, tama na, dapat bigyan na natin ng proteksyon ang lahat ng overseas worker. I've been to Dubai, I've been to countries where I see workers from Nepal, India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and, talagang hirap. So, we really have, sabi nga nung aming slogan sa Red Cross, changing minds, saving lives. We want to change the minds of the world. We want to change the minds of those who are still backward in terms of their outlook. We pride ourselves in human rights. We keep talking about it, and there are people here who are fighting against human rights abuse. Even our president says, Tama, you're fighting for human rights, I'm fighting for human life. Well, I don't agree with that in total. Tama yung sinasabi natin, if we're gonna fight for human lives, dapat kasama yung human rights. And kung sasabihin natin yan, we have to be consistent. Whether here in the Senate, or outside there, by our ambassadors, or by any official of this country going abroad, dapat ipaglalaban natin yan. Huwag tayo matakot. At kung talagang sasabihin natin ang katotohanan sa mga tao natin, pag pumunta tayo dyan, sasabihin na lang natin, grin and bear it. Tanggapin nyo na lang. Kung kayo marirape o kayo hindi bibigyan ng SSS, tanggapin nyo na lamang. It is precisely why we have government that must speak out and show its true form to principle, agreement to principle, that is practiced, not just in word but in deed. That's why we say that kailangan itong self-employed, particularly the OFWs, should now be covered by this Act, Your Honor. It is up to us, and I know, and I yield, and I admire the wisdom of my good friend of so many years since Acro days, because he's been a labor lawyer for a long, long time, been in the Department of Labor, been executive secretary, represented many laborers, and I bow to his expertise and his experience. And precisely, and I'm not blowing wind up here, where the sun doesn't shine. I'm really saying that magaling talaga yung sinasabi ni Senator Gabaldon dito, ako'y sunod-sunuran dahil ginagalang ko yung galing niya para makagawa tayo ng mas magandang batas dito. Dahil yung nakikita niya, hindi ko pa rin nakikita eh. At hindi rin nakikita ng SSAs. Kaya ngayon dapat makita na ng SSAs, yung sinasabi niya, para sa ganun ay makagawa tayo ng magandang batas. So, I suppose, Mr. President, it is up to us to really just make that assertion in this law. And ika nga kung hindi gagawin yan, ay nako, ito na nga, naglakas na tayo sa kasambahay eh. Yung ba mga kasambahay natin, kino-cover natin sa SSS. Mahirap enforce yan. The problem with our country, Your Honor, and I don't mean to give a privileged speech here right now, although it sounds like it, is because we have to walk our talk. We keep talking about what we want, We know what we do not want, but we don't want to do what we need to do. And that is why kailangan gawin na po natin ito. Hindi ho kami nag-argue ni Senator Dillon dito. Alam ko lang na dapat panindigan natin ang mahirap. Hindi yung pag mag-uumpisa para tayo, sasabihin na ng mga magagawa, sasabihin ng mga labor, ng mga Secretary of Labor, mahirap yan. Hindi mangyayari yan. Naka-13 na ho tayo ng states. Sana baka sakali bukas makakuha na tayo ng another 13. And then the next year, another 13. And when there are more people signing here, we can go to Saudi Arabia. We can go to these countries and say, hey, maya kayo, lahat ng bansa dito, kayo na lang ang nasa gubat pa. Kayo na lang ang nasa dilim. Payagan nyo na itong mga magagawa ng ilang bansa, and we will look good before India, before Pakistan, before Bangladesh, that we are the ones, the source point of the tip of providing respect and talagang bigyan natin, where credit is due, the hard work of our employees abroad para maproteksyon sila. Mahirap pong gawin talaga yan because we're intruding in their sovereignty. But if these people are part of the United Nations, where is Teddy Boy Locsin, my good friend from Accra as well? He should be pounding the table in the United Nations and saying, hey, lahat kayo mga Middle Eastern countries, sundin nyo na dapat yung sinasabi natin declaration of human rights human rights as well as the rights of labor. So nakalagay dyan, every member, everyone as a member of society has the right to social security. Ano yon? Slogan lang ba yan? Abay, sinasabi ng lahat ng buong mundo, may right to social security, pero wala namang ginagawa. This is not a diatribe against my good colleague, and as I said, tuwan-tuwa ko na sinasabi niya yan, but I guess we just have to not grin and bear it, accept the fact that we have to write this in our law and try to find together how we can best explicitate this to our people in such a manner that we do not injure the rights of others. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, thank you very much for that quite lengthy
Impassioned, Your Honor, is the word that you're looking for.
okay.
Impassioned. Let me help you for once.
lengthy but impassioned
Thank you.
speech
I was
on this
giving
point.
you a chance
I
to
just want, the reason that I brought that out, Mr. President, is that from the records that I have, in the committee hearings, the land-based sector has raised concerns about compulsory coverage of land-based workers. They were alleging the land-based agencies were asserting that the land-based workers do not want, and I quote it, do not want to be made a mandatory, they do not, I'm sorry, let me read this document coming from the committee secretary. The question was, are the OFWs willing to pay such contributions? And the comment here is that this is a very important question because in the past, the OFWs complained and clamored for a stop for PhilHealth and Pag-ibig contributions. They do not want them to be made mandatory requirement for exit clearance processing. This resulted to POEA issuing advisory an advisory identified as POEA Advisory Number 6, Series of 2015, that took effect on April 1, 2015, separating the payment of said government fees from the requirement of OEC processing. Therefore, while the POEA strongly encouraged all OFWs to pay their membership for the said government fees, they were no longer made mandatory for OFWs. The concern was raised that this SSS collection, mandatory collection, might also be resisted by the OFWs. And therefore, the proposal, and I'm just reading this on the record, the proposal is, quote, membership of land-based workers to the SSS be done voluntarily. This is the reason why we brought this up. This was brought up in this this report from the committee secretary, reflecting, I assume, the matters discussed in the committee hearings. But let us leave it at that. Let us sleep over it, Mr. Sponsor, and maybe we can go back to it later on with a less impassioned dissertation.
Less lengthy but impassioned nonetheless, Your Honor.
Mr. President, I think the majority leader...
I just want to make a statement, Your Honor, that just to correct that impression, Your Honor. I wouldn't call it a misimpression because there is really concern that they're going to pay. Palagi naman ganyan yan eh. But in reality, they will pay 550 pesos. They're not going to pay the employer's contribution. They'll pay 550 pesos. And can you imagine, if by some misfortune they die, their family will have at least 32,000 pesos right away for the 550. And so, pag napaliwanag ko, and this can be done, hindi lang ginagawa, and I can tell you already, hindi ginagawa properly, so much so that I've even offered, we also give this pre-departure orientation law as Red Cross volunteers, para talaga mapaliwanagan. Kasi habang nasa dilim ang tao, hindi nila naiintindihan, talaga matatakot yan. So, that's just all I want to say. And I'm glad that you said this is for the record, and that's good. But I think it is also important that we lead. And leading doesn't mean that you have to play your fiddle before the public all the time. You have to tell them, and that's why we're leaders, to point the way at a better life. And I have no doubt that this will be better for our workers, Your Honor.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. The majority leader is sending me signals.
Smoke signals.
I know what his signal is, I cannot understand it. But anyway, just for advance info, Mr. President, our next subject will be on the issue of remittance of contributions, and that's starting on page 10 of the bill. So we can take that up in the next, when the next
Monday.
time is Monday, when this issue is again on the floor. And we have no objections to the suspension of the consideration of the measure, Mr. President.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you,
very
Mr.
much.
President. Yes, Mr. President, being the MMDA of the Senate, I'm just being tasked by so many of our colleagues to take up all their measures. So we thank the good gentleman sponsor for being kind enough to allow us to suspend consideration of the measure till we take it up again on Monday, so that we can tackle also a number of local bills, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move to suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 1753. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, the motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move for the additional reference of business. I believe there's a third additional reference of business, so we can tackle the bill that we are going to tackle next.
Secretary will read the third additional reference of business.
Third additional reference to business, committee report number 414, submitted jointly by the Committees on Local Government and Electoral Reforms and People's Participation on House Bill number 5162, introduced by Representative Acharon, entitled, An Act Separating the City of General Santos from the 1st Legislative District of the Province of South Cotabato to constitute the lone Legislative District of the City of General Santos, recommending its approval with amendments taking into consideration Senate Bill number 1487, sponsor Senator Sonny Angara.
To the calendar for ordinary business.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move to transfer from the calendar of ordinary business to special order House Bill number 5162. And I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
I move to consider House Bill number 5162 and would like to ask the Secretary to read the title of the measure.
The Secretary will read the title of the measure.
House Bill number 5162, an act separating the City of General Santos from the 1st Legislative District of the Province of South Cotabato to constitute the lone legislative district of the city of General Santos.
Mr. President, I move to recognize Senator Sonny Angara to sponsor the measure, and shortly after, we'd like to also recognize Senator Manny Pacquiao, Emmanuel Pacquiao, to also co-sponsor the measure. So moved.
Senator Angara is recognized to sponsor the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished Majority Leader, distinguished colleagues. Your Honors, we rise to sponsor Committee Report 414, taking into account House Bill 5162 and Senate Bill 1487 filed by our colleague from General Santos and Sarangani, Pambansang Kamao, our pride, Senator Manny Pacquiao. Muli po tayong tumatayo, Mr. President, ngayon sa ngalan ng demokrasya para magkaroon ng sapat na representasyon ng ating mga kababayan sa Kongreso. Isinusulong po natin ang isang panukala na naglalayong ayusin ang mga distrito ng probinsya ng South Cotabato nang sa gayon maging isang bagot hiwalay na legislative district ang General Santos City. Dati po, 3 ang distrito ng South Cotabato, pero simula noong 1992, nung naisabatas ang Republic Act 7228, ito'y naging 2 lamang dahil ang mga munisipyong bumubuo sa kanyang dating ikatlong distrito, ang Alabel, Glan, Kiamba, Maasim, Maitum, Malapatan at Malungon ang naging kasapi sa probinsya ng Sarangani. Under our proposal, South Cotabato will again have 3 legislative districts, but this time, General Santos City will be separated from the 1st district to be constituted into the 3rd district of South Cotabato. In this way, we effectively constitute the lone legislative district of General Santos City. Mr. President, according to Article 6, Section 5 of the 1987 Constitution, each city with a population of at least 250,000 shall have at least 1 representative. Kung pagbabatayan po natin ang pinakahuling datos ng census nitong 2015, ang General Santos City ay may kabuuang populasyon ng 594,446. Mula 2010 hanggang 2015, lumobo ang kanilang populasyon ng halos 2%. Sa madaling salita, sumasang-ayon ang General Santos City sa pamantayan ng saligang batas para magkaroon sila ng sarili nilang representante sa Kamara. Pero hindi lang po laki ng populasyon ang dahilan natin para isulong ang pagkakaroon ng hiwalay na representante ang General Santos City. Malaki rin ang potensyal ng lungsod para maging isang sentro ng agrikultura at kalakalan sa Mindanao. Kaya nararapat na matutukan ito ng pambansang pamahalaan. Matagal na rin po kasing maugong ang General Santos City sa buong Soc-Sargen o Region 12 dahil sa mabilis niyang pag-unlad at mabilis na pag-unlad ng kanyang ekonomiya. Simula pa noong dekada 70, kilala na po ang lungsod bilang tuna capital of the Philippines, kung kaya't agad-agad itong idineklarang highly urbanized city noong taong 1988. Ngayon na nagsisimulang lumawak palalo ang mga oportunidad dito, lalo na sa turismo at sa agrikultura, mahalagang magkaroon ng malawak na boses ang Gensan sa pambansang pamahalaan at hiwalay na kinatawan na pagsisilbihan sila. Mr. President, in providing representation to Gensan, we broaden the chances not just for their issues and problems to be addressed decisively, but for them to speedily take advantage of whatever opportunity that may arise in front of them. Creating a new legislative district is also another way of promoting grassroots participation. Mas maraming mamamayan sa Gensan ang mabibigyan ng pagkakataon para direktang lumahok sa pamamahala ng kanilang pamayanan kapag may kinatawan sila sa Kamara. Para siguraduhin natin na patuloy ang pag-unlad ng mga lungsod, tama lamang na pagkalooban natin sila ng mga kinatawan sa pambansang gobyerno. Isapatas na po natin ang panukalang ito para lalo pa nating matutulungan ang General Santos City na makamit ang kaunlaran at kasaganaan na inaasam nito. Maraming salamat po, Mr. President.
Senator Pacquiao is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon, everyone. On May 31, 2017, I filed Senate Bill 1487, an act separating the city of General Santos City from the 1st Legislative District of the province of South Cotabato to constitute the lone district of the city of General Santos City. Article 6, Section 5, Mr. President, Paragraph 3 of the 1970 Constitution provides that each legislative district shall comprise, as far as practicable, continuous, compact, and adjacent territory. Each city with a population of at least 250,000 or less, or each province shall have at least one representative. Based on the 2015 census of population and housing, General Santos City, which is part of the first district of South Cotabato, has a total population of 594,000, Mr. President, with an average of population growth rate of 1.91% from 2010 to 2015. The same report shows that the three municipalities which are also part of the first district has a total population of more than 260,000 in 2015. Pulumulok has 152,789, and Tupi has 69,976, and Tampakan has 39,525 as of 2015, Mr. President. In line with the constitutional provision on legislative districts and the principle of proper democratic representation, it is high time to create a legislative district for General Santos City and grant the sole highly urbanized city and Soc-Sergeant with a voice in the Philippine Congress. Mr. President, I would like to thank Mr. Senator Sani Angara, Chairman of the Committee of Local Government, for sponsoring this measure, and our fellow senators for supporting this initiative. Thank you, Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, to give our colleagues a bit more time to study the measure, we move to suspend consideration of House Bill number 5162. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, the measure is suspended consideration.
May I ask for 1 minute suspension, Mr. President?
Session is suspended.
Second reading na natin. No worries, bro. Mr. President, we're ready to resume, sir.
Ready to resume? Session is resumed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I move to resume consideration of Senate Bill number 1842 under Committee Report number 396. I so move.
1842.
Yes, sir. That is the act amending the local government code.
Any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, the status, we're in the period of interpellation. There being, with the permission of the minority floor leader and other members, there being no member who wishes to interpellate the said measure, we move to close the period of interpellation, Mr. President.
Motion to close the period of interpellation. Any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
I move to open the period of amendments, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, the period of amendments is hereby open.
We'd like to recognize the sponsor, Mr. President, Senator Angara, if there are any amendments on deck from the committee.
Senator Sani Angara is recognized. Substitute.
We have a 1 minute suspension, Mr. President.
Session suspended.
No, I mean,
Ano? Interpolate, oh.
ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
We have no amendments, Mr. President.
There are no amendments.
Similarly, no colleagues of ours have approached to proffer any amendments as well, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President, that is
So,
correct. So
Perhaps we could
to-
move
we move
to close.
We
President.
move to close the period of amendments.
Any objection? There being none, the period of amendments hereby closed.
Mr. President, with no other amendments and we close the period of this period, we move to approve on second reading Senate Bill number 1842 under Committee Report number 396. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none. Motion is approved. House Bill or Senate Bill? Senate Bill 1842 is hereby approved on second reading.
Thank you, Mr. President. We'd like to congratulate the sponsor, Senator Angara, and of course the sponsor in the House, Congressman Loyola. We await his blowout and the city of Carmona, Mr. President. I hope they can invite us when they're once a city. I'm on my way to suspending it. Relax lang. My staff is overzealous, Mr. President. I now would like to move to suspend consideration of the said matter, of the said Senate Bill number 1842. I so move.
Any objection? There being none, motion is approved. Consideration
see
of
you in
Senate
the theater.
1842 is hereby suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, you know,
I just want to
Yes,
manifest, if
Senator.
I may, Your Honor, that I'd
Senator
like to be
Gordon.
co-author in the bill for Carmona.
maybe also, I would like to also express my wish to be a co-author of the said measure, Mr. President, together with Senator Gordon, if possible. I so move, Mr. President, that Senator Gordon and myself be co-author of the said measure.
We place that on record.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I just ask for a quick suspension, Mr. President, to confer which of the two sponsors here would be going ahead? Senator Escudero, okay. Which one will you start with? Gabaldon, Omnibus. Okay. Mr. President, we move to transfer from the calendar of ordinary business to special order. House Bill number 5577. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, the motion is approved.
I move to consider House Bill number 5577, ask the Secretary to read the title of the measures.
Secretary will read the title.
House Bill number 5577, an act mandating the conservation of Gabaldon school buildings nationwide, providing penalties for violations and appropriating funds therefore.
Mr. President, I move to recognize the honorable sponsor, Senator Chis Escudero, to sponsor the said measure.
Senator Escudero is recognized to sponsor the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, as chairperson of your Committee on Education, Arts and Culture, I rise to sponsor Committee Report number 394, which recommends the approval of House Bill number 5577. As a background, Mr. President, during the 1900s, under the American regime, free public schools were established in the Philippines, an important reform in the country's education system. In support of this, the late former Assemblyman Isauro Gabaldon of Nueva Ecija authored Act number 1801, also known as the Gabaldon Act, which appropriated at that time 1 million pesos for the construction of school buildings in every municipality in the country that were built, from 1907 up to 1946. These schoolhouses, Mr. President, in honor of the contributions of Assemblyman Gabaldon to the country's cultural heritage and education. Around 3,000 schoolhouses, Mr. President, were constructed during that time. However, as of date, there are only 1,446 Gabaldon school buildings left standing all over the country. These structures that are considered part of our national heritage, being the foundation of the country's public education, are now fast deteriorating. Therefore, we need to conserve and protect these buildings, which symbolize the important reforms in our public education system and also signify how we as Filipinos value education as an important aspect in our growth and development as citizens of the Republic. This bill, Mr. President, seeks to conserve the existing Gabaldon school buildings nationwide in accordance with Republic Act number 10066, entitled An Act Providing for the Protection and Conservation of the National Cultural Heritage, strengthening the National Cultural Commission for the Arts, or NCCA, and its affiliated agencies. I seek the support and approval of the Chamber with respect to this measure, Mr. President. Before the Majority Leader suspends further consideration of the bill, may I seek the recognition of Senator Angara, Mr. President, who I understand also intends to deliver his co-sponsorship remarks.
Senator Sani Angara is recognized.
Thank you, Senator Escuderos. Thank you, Mr. President, Majority Leader, colleagues. Our national hero, Jose Rizal, once wrote, "The school is the basis of society. The school is the book in which is written the future of nations. Show me the schools of a people, and I will show you what that people is. I desire the country's welfare, therefore I would build schools," according to Rizal. Ginong Pangulong, inyong lingkod ay tumatayo sa plenaryong ito upang himukin ang ating mga kasamahan na makiisa sa aming layunin kaugnay sa preserbasyon ng mga Gabaldon School buildings na itinayo sa mga lalawigan, mahigit isang siglo na po ang nakaraan. Ang ating panukala ay nagsisilbing counterpart measure sa panukala ni Anwaray Party List Representative Victoria Isabel Noel. Nagpapasalamat po kami ng lubos sa ating Education Committee Chairperson Senator Cheese Escudero at kay Senadora Lauren Legarda bilang co-sponsor na masugid na katuwang sa pagpreserba ng ating kasaysayan at kultura. The Senate Chairperson has already outlined, Mr. President, the history of the Gabaldon classrooms and how many are left out of the original 3,000. Less than half are left, Mr. President. These structures were created between the years 1907 and 1946, and naging arkitekto dito sa mga nasabing proyekto ang Amerikanong si William Parsons, na siyang nagdisenyo sa Philippine General Hospital. Hindi naman objection yung ingay dyan, ha? That's not an objection. Ang arkitekto ay ang Amerikanong si William Parsons na siyang nagdisenyo ng Philippine General Hospital sa unang Manila Hotel, sa Ginibang Paco Railroad Station sa May Quirino Avenue, at ang dating Kapitolyo ng lalawigan ng Laguna. Pangunahing material na ginamit sa konstruksyon ng mga paaralang ito ang matitigas na kahoy na gawang Pilipinas, gayon din ang mga bintanang gawa sa kapis. Hindi pangkaraniwan ang mga sinaunang Gabaldon School sapagkat karamihan ng mga ito'y may silong o nakaangat sa lupa na ginagabayan lamang ng mga poste sa bawat sulok ng gusaling kahoy. Ang mga paaralang ito ay may taas ng hanggang 2 palapag lamang at may hugis na H or U. Sa pagdaan ng panahon, Ginoong Pangulo, iba't iba ang kinasadlakan ng mga gusaling ito na nilagasan na ng maraming taon. Karamihan sa mga ito ay sinalanta at sinira ng malalakas na mga bagyo. Meron namang inabo ng malaking sunog. Sa Jampang, Argao sa Cebu, noong taong 1984, isang Gabaldon Schoolhouse ang nilamon ng apoy na labis na ikinalungkot ng mga residente na naging bahagi ng paaralang yon. Taong 2013 naman, sa pananalasa ng Bagyong Yolanda, nawasak ang ilang mga paaralang Gabaldon sa Aklan. Ang kauna-unahang paaralan naman dito sa Bayambang, Pangasinan na itinayo noong 1912 ay sumailalim sa demolisyon dahil sa umano'y napakalaki na po ng sira nito. Ayon sa pagtataya ng Department of Education, Mga 1,400 na Gabaldon school buildings na lang ang natitira. At lahat daw ay nanganganib na ma-demolish o maiwan at mabulok sa limot. Ginoong Pangulo, layunin po natin ngayon sa plenaryo ang panatilihing buhay at sariwa ang kultura natin sa pamamagitan ng pangangalaga at preserbasyon sa mga paaralan na ito. Hindi na pangkaraniwan para sa isang paaralan ang disenyo ng Gabaldon schoolhouses. Kaya dapat lang mas pagtuunan natin ang pag-iingat ang mga paaralang ito na sadyang bahagi ng ating kasaysayan, a valuable part of our heritage, Mr. President. Hinihiling natin ang malawakang ugnayan ng mga ahensyang may kinalaman dito, ang DepEd, ang NCCA at ng National Museum para mapangalagaan at mapanatiling matibay ang mga nasabing istruktura at magamit ng mga bagong henerasyon. Dapat magkaroon ng inventaryo sa lahat ng paaralang Gabaldon upang mabatid ang estado ng mga ito, ang tibay ng kanilang istruktura at kung maaari pang malunasan ang pagkasira ng karamihan nito. Ginoong Pangulo, kung ang mga sinaunang proyekto ng mga ninuno nating Pilipino ay ating isasantabi at baliwalain, ito'y pagbabaliwala na rin sa kasaysayan ng ating bansa at pagsasantabi ng nakaraan na nagsisilbing pundasyon ng ating kasalukuyan. But when we cherish our history and preserve our heritage, we strengthen the ground on which all of us stand as a nation. If we protect and cultivate the soil from which all of us came, who knows what fruits we will enjoy in time. Ipasa na po natin ang panukalang ito at preserbahin po natin ang mga Gabaldon school buildings. Thank you, Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
President, I believe Senator Gordon would also like to sponsor the measure.
Senator Gordon is recognized.
Mr. President, I would hazard an extemporaneous speech on this matter, principally because I'm a firm believer on the Gabaldon schools, Your Honor. I've been around the country, especially during disasters, and I've always admired the Gabaldon edifices that must be preserved, restored, and so that we could build it right in all our schools, Your Honor. Can you imagine, Your Honor, according to the distinguished author and sponsor of this law, that they built so many thousands of Gabaldon for 3,000 Gabaldon edifices for ₱1 million at that time. And up to now, they survive, Your Honor. Unfortunately, we seem to be very niggard in monitoring itong mga ginawa ng mga Amerikano na ito na ginasusan ng bansa natin noong araw na pinangalan sa isang congressman named Gabaldon. At sa pangalan na lang talaga mukhang talaga maton na yung eskwela eh. Matagal talaga na tumitindig at I remember Miriam Defensor Santiago used to say that he was educated in one of these Gabaldon schools in Iloilo, Mr. President. So I would like to associate myself with the very, very good vision of Senator Escudero and Senator Angara on the matter of making sure that we're able to provide appropriations to restore these buildings, Your Honor, and in fact, even propagate on a bigger scale, perhaps on a better scale, if you like. Ours is only to improve, and for those that are really considered heritage, to restore. This country is not famous for keeping its heritage sites, Your Honor. Even in my city, and I was asked by Senator Escudero just a few minutes ago, Olongapo is not an old city. No, Your Honor, it is a city that was born inside the Subic Naval Base. In fact, my father was born there, and we were trying to preserve the hospital where he was born. And yet, Your Honor, we built a museum. There was a convention center that was built there, what we then called the Philaview Center. And today, it has been taken over, just as many schools, by a mall, Your Honor. And that's why I had to personally sue the mayor and the mall operator for such a travesty, Your Honor. Now, can you imagine 3,000 schools, of which only 1,000 or 1,000 are left, Your Honor? And so, Your Honor, I would like to stand foursquare on this proposal and just offer my commendation and felicitations and honor to the presence of the sponsors of this bill, and I'd like to be associated with this as a co-sponsor. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Majority
President,
Leader.
may I also be made a co-author of the said measure for Gabaldon schools.
We take that, place that on record.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move to suspend consideration on House Bill number 5577 so that our colleagues can study the measure further.
Any objection? There being none, consideration of House Bill 5577 is hereby suspended.
Mr. President, I move that we transfer from the calendar of ordinary business to special order House Bill number 6065. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move to consider House Bill number 6065 and request the Secretary to read the title of the measure.
Secretary will read the title of the measure.
House Bill number 6065, an act renaming the Naval State University, NSU, in the municipality of Naval, province of Biliran as the Biliran Province State University, and removing the prohibition on the appointment of the university president and private sector representatives, amending for the purpose Republic Act number 9718, entitled an act converting the Naval Institute of Technology in the municipality of Naval, province of Biliran, into a state university to be known as the Naval State University, integrating therewith the Biliran National Agricultural College in the municipality of Biliran, and appropriating funds therefore.
Mr. President, the sponsor of the said measure, Senator Escudero, would like to deliver Omnibus sponsorship speech for several of the measures that he's sponsoring today. So what we could do with the permission of the body is listen to his Omnibus speech or sponsorship speech for the measure, and then suspend consideration of these bills, and then we take it up one by one, inserting to the record his original sponsorship speech. Mr. President.
Can I request for a minute
Well,
suspension, Mr. President?
1 minute.
Session is suspended. Pwede adapt mo.
Session ready to resume, Mr. President.
Todo niya, no? Convert the City Polytechnic College into a state university.
Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I withdraw my motion to recognize the gentleman sponsor, and I'd like to move that we transfer from the calendar special order to transfer the calendar of ordinary business to special order, rather. As I mentioned earlier, House Bill number 6065, which the title has been already read, as well as House Bill number 6715, House Bill number 6741, House Bill number 6995, House Bill number 7175, House Bill number 7176, House Bill number 7177, House Bill number 7178, House Bill number 7240, House Bill number 7241, House Bill number 7242, House Bill number 7243. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, the enumerated House bills are hereby transferred from the calendar for ordinary business to the calendar for special orders.
Mr. President, I move to consider the named House bill numbers and ask the Secretary to read the title of the measures.
The Secretary will read the titles of the short titles of the measures.
House Bill number 6715, an act separating the Southern Philippines Agriculture, Business, Marine, and Aquatic School of Technology, Digos City Campus in the city of Digos, Davao del Sur. House Bill 6741, an act converting the City-State Polytechnic College into a state university to be known as the Zamboanga Peninsula Polytechnic State University and appropriating funds therefore. House Bill number 6995, an act converting the Camarines Sur Institute of Fisheries and Marine Sciences Ragay campus located in the municipality of Ragay, Camarines Sur into a TESDA supervised school to be known as Ragay Polytechnic Skills Institute appropriating funds therefore. House Bill number 7175, an act separating the Igbaras National High School, Alameda Extension in Barangay Alameda, Municipality of Igbaras, Province of Iloilo, from the Igbaras National High School, converting it into the Independent National High School to be known as Alameda National High School, and appropriating funds therefore. House Bill 7176, an act separating the San Emmanuel National High School, Annex in Barangay San Pablo, Tacurong City, Province of Sultan Kudarat, from the San Manuel National High School, converting it to an independent national high school to be known as San Pablo National High School and appropriating funds therefore. House Bill number 7177, an act separating the Polo National High School, Malanday Annex in Barangay Malanday, Valenzuela City, from the Polo National High School, converting it into an independent national high school to be known as Malanday National High School and appropriating funds therefore. House Bill number 7178, an act establishing a national high school in Barangay Tambo, Parañaque City to be known as Tambo National High School and appropriating funds therefore. House Bill number 7240, an act establishing a national high school in Barangay 20 Reales, Valenzuela City to be known as 20 Reales National High School and appropriating funds therefore. House Bill number 7241, an act establishing an elementary school in Barangay San Antonio, Parañaque City to be known as Silverio Elementary School and appropriating funds therefore. House Bill number 7242, an act separating the Don Felix Serra National High School, Lumboyan Extension in Barangay Lumboyan, Municipality of San Joaquin, Province of Iloilo, from the Don Felix Serra National High School, converting it into an independent national high school to be known as Santa Ana National High School and appropriating funds therefore. House Bill number 7243, an act separating the Tacurong National High School, Upper Katungal Annex in Barangay Upper Katungal, Tacurong City, Province of Sultan Kudarat, from the Tacurong National High School and converting it into an independent national high school to be known as Upper Katungal National High School and appropriating funds therefore.
We're done?
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move now to recognize the gentleman from Sorsogon, Senator Chis Escudero, to sponsor the said measures.
Senator Escudero is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Leader. Mr. President, as Chairman of your Committee on Education, Arts and Culture, this representation humbly submits to this chamber a total of 12 legislative measures that seek to establish, separate, convert, and or rename an elementary school, 7 secondary schools, and 4 state colleges and universities. Number 1, House Bill number 6065. The province of Biliran, formerly a sub-province of Leyte, became an independent province by virtue of Republic Act number 7160 in 1992 and eventually became a lone district of Biliran in 1995. The Naval State University, located in the municipality of Naval, province of Biliran, is the sole state university in the province. This bill seeks to further acknowledge the independent identity of Biliran through the adoption of the province's name to its major and only state university in the district. It is only fair to recognize the collective efforts of the local government in achieving the province's independence by renaming the aforementioned educational institution to the namesake of the province to be known as the Biliran Island State University. Number 2, House Bill number 6715. On July 23, 2013, under Republic Act number 10360, the new province of Davao Occidental was created from the province of Davao del Sur. Currently, the Southern Philippines Agribusiness and Marine and Aquatic School of Technology, or SPAMAST, has 3 campuses. 2 campuses are located in the province of Davao Occidental, while 1 campus is in Digo City, Davao del Sur. Hence, the bill seeks to convert the SPAMAST Davao del Sur campus into its own state college, which will be known as the Davao del Sur State College. We believe that by converting this campus into a state college, less privileged students in Davao del Sur who cannot afford private tertiary education in the province and other nearby municipalities will be given a bigger chance to access quality education under the public education system. Number 3, House Bill number 6741. The Zamboanga City State Polytechnic College is the oldest college in the Zamboanga Peninsula, as well as the other higher education institutions whose programs focus on technology and technology-related education.
With the role of technology in development, higher technology education programs, especially technological innovations and research, must therefore be given much attention by our education sector. The curriculum of the proposed university is designed in such a way to help underprivileged students to be globally competitive through the implementation of a fully ladderized curriculum program. It awards the students with a certificate of proficiency after a determined exit point, which means they will have the opportunity to start working or to continue their education. The conversion of the Zamboanga City State Polytechnic College into a state university to the Zamboanga Peninsula Polytechnic State University is a key step in the transition from local excellence to excellence of the caliber of international standards. Number 4, House Bill number 6995. The aforementioned institution in House Bill number 6995 is of significance not just for the people of Ragay, but also for the people of the province of Camarines Sur in general. The people in the area who seek to engage in fishery-related business, as well as those who seek to study marine resources, are equipped by this institution with the necessary skills for their respective fields. With the changing demands of the local and international labor markets, we deem it necessary to equip our students with the necessary skills to achieve global competence, thus converting the Camarines Sur Institute of Fisheries and Marine Sciences, Ragay Campus, into a technical vocational educational institute which specializes in courses in aquaculture, fisheries, and aquatrade industry, will greatly benefit the people of Ragay and other adjacent communities that depend on our marine resources thereat. House Bill number 7175. The bill is in response to the clamor of parents and students of Barangay Almeda and adjoining barangays for better quality, accessible education, secondary education in the area. House Bill number 7176. This bill seeks to separate and convert the San Miguel National High School Annex in Barangay San Pablo to a national high school. Ensuring regular budgetary appropriations from the national government would definitely help the school provide its students better quality education by way of adequate number of teachers, classrooms, and educational materials. Number 7, House Bill number 7177. Since its first operation in 2015, the Polo National High School Malanday Annex has been accommodating students from Barangay Malanday and its adjacent neighboring barangays. That includes 9 feeder schools, 5 public elementary schools, and 4 private schools. The school is now complete with facilities including an activity center and library to make it more responsive and effective in attaining its goal of quality, accessible education in their locality. Thus, the proposal is to convert it into an independent national high school. House Bill number 7178. Presently, the Tambo High School is being run by the local government of Parañaque in cooperation with Barangay Tambo. However, considering the very minimal income of the LGU and barangay, the projected increase of student enrollees, they may not be able to sustain the support it gives to the school's operations and salaries of teachers. It is feared that if it continues to operate as such, it may fail to provide quality and decent education to its students. The bill proposes to convert the Tambo High School into a national high school to ensure regular budgetary appropriations from the national government and ensure quality and accessible education for all students in the said barangay and neighboring communities. Number 9, House Bill number 7240. Having built the city government of Valenzuela, dami nyo naman eskwelaang ginagawa dito, sir. Matagal na to. Having been built by the city of Valenzuela under its 360-degree educational investment program, the school has complete facilities such as classrooms, computer rooms, activity center, and library. The proposed establishment of the Viente Viales National High School is intended to serve the entire barangay with a population of not less than 23,000. Number 10, House Bill number 7241. The proposed measure seeks to establish an elementary school in the at the Silverio compound in Barangay San Antonio, Parañaque City. For a number of years now, there has been a problem of overcrowding in the nearest elementary school, the San Antonio Elementary School. The establishment of the said elementary school will decongest the San Antonio Elementary School, as it is expected to accommodate students coming from other barangays and help resolve the pressing demands of classroom to teacher to student ratio and accessible quality education in the area. Number 11, House Bill number 7242. This annex school located in Barangay Lumboyan, San Joaquin Iloilo caters to students of elementary schools from Barangay Lumboyan, Barangay Langka, and students from 9 mountainous barangays in the northernmost part of San Joaquin Iloilo.
its independence from its mother school, shall ensure greater allocation of resources for the school that will help provide better quality and accessible education for all. Number 12, finally, number 12. House Bill number 7243. To sustain its operations, the school receives an annual budgetary allocation from its mother school. However, the student enrollment rate increases, the demands for more teachers and classrooms and more educational facilities and materials increase as well. Its present budgetary allocation is simply not enough. The bill seeks to separate and convert the San Manuel National High School annex in Barangay San Pablo to a national high school to guarantee a regular source of funds rather that will help the school provide its students to better quality and accessible education for its constituencies. We fervently seek and ask the support of our colleagues for these aforementioned local bills, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Leader. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Secretary. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, to give some time to our colleagues to study the measure, I move that we suspend consideration on House Bill number 6065, 6715, 6741, 6995, 7175, 7176, 7177, 7178, 7240, 7241, 7242, and 7243. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration on Senate Bill number 1641 under Committee Report number 219.
Any objection? Hearing none.
Mr. President, the status is we're in the period of interpellation, and there being no member had signified to interpolate the said measure, Mr. President. Yes, except for Senator Trillanes, the sponsor would like to be recognized, Mr. President.
Senator Trillanes is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee was in receipt of the interpellation queries of Senator De Lima and would like to insert to the records, with the permission of the body, the queries and the committee's reply to these questions. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none.
Thank you, Mr. President. With that, we move to close the period of interpellation. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none.
Thank you, Mr. President. And we've actually, for the record, we've had this in the calendar for quite some time. So we're happy to take note that we can move forward with this measure. And we now like to open the period of amendments, Mr. President, and recognize the sponsor once again.
The sponsor is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. There are no committee amendments, Mr. President.
Individual, there are no individual amendments as well, Mr. President. No one signified to manifest any amendments. We move to close the period.
Mr. President.
I'm sorry.
No committee.
Individual. My apologies, Mr. President. There are individual amendments. We'd like to recognize the sponsor for the said amendments.
The sponsor is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. On the short title of the bill, on page 1, line 6, replace the numerical figure 2017 to 2018. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none.
On page 10, line 16, after the word given, delete the phrase 1 year and replace it with 2 years. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none.
There are no more individual amendments, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Trillanes.
Mr. President, with that, I move to close the period of amendments.
Any objection? Hearing none.
Mr. President, I move to approve on second reading Senate Bill numbers 1641
Any
under
objection?
Committee Report number 219. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none.
Mr. President, I move to suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 1641. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none.
Congratulations to the authors and the sponsor.
Thank you, Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, we move to transfer from the calendar of ordinary business to special order Senate Bill number 1733 under Committee Report number 276. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none.
May we ask, may we move to consider Senate Bill number 1733. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none.
We'd like to ask the Secretary to read the title of the measure.
The Secretary will read the title of the measure.
Senate Bill Number 1733, an act to amend certain provisions of Republic Act Number 7431, otherwise known as the Radiologic Technology Act of 1992, and for other purposes.
Mr. President, we'd like to recognize the good sponsor, Senator Sonny Trillanes, to give his sponsorship speech.
Senator Trillanes, the sponsor, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on Civil Service, Government Organization, and Professional Regulation has the honor to sponsor Senate Bill Number 1733 under Committee Report Number 276, otherwise known as Radiologic Technology Act. Mr. President, the state recognizes the vital role of X-ray and radiologic technologies in nation building. They are highly educated professionals in the health sector, rather. They are highly educated professionals who are devoted to ensuring the delivery of quality healthcare services by protecting the public from hazards posed by radiation, as well as ensuring proper diagnosis, treatment, and research through the application of machines and/or equipment that use radiation. More than 20 years ago, Republic Act 7431 was enacted to regulate the study and practice of radiologic technology in the country. Created under this law was the Board of Radiologic Technology, consisting of members from 3 different professions, namely radiologic technologists, a radiologist, and a medical physicist. It is in the current view that including a radiologist and a medical physicist in the board defeats the intent of the law. A radiologist is a licensed physician who specializes in the diagnosis or treatment of diseases with the use of radiation, while a medical physicist specializes in the application of the principles and techniques of physics in medicine. These professions are entirely different from radiologic technology-related professions. Mr. President, this proposed measure seeks to address this apparent oversight in the law by excluding the radiologist and medical physicist from the Board of Radiologic Technology. This committee also believes that due to recent developments and innovations in technology, there is a need to improve and update the law. The following are the salient features proposed by this measure. Creation of a professional regulatory board which has supervise the practice of radiologic technology with a mandate to adopt and institute mechanisms to guarantee the fitness of individuals admitted into the X-ray and radiologic technology professions. Incorporation into the law the mandate for continuing professional development of our radiologic technologies in order to ensure that they are updated on the latest developments and innovations in the profession. Inclusion of a foreign reciprocity clause which would pave the way for our radiologic technologies to practice abroad, provided that we also afford the same privilege to citizens of the receiving country, and integration of all professional X-ray and/or radiologic technology groups through the mandatory membership of all registered X-ray and radiologic technologies in the accredited integrated professional organization of radiologic technologies, which will be accredited by the Professional Regulation Commission. This measure likewise changes the scope of the Board of Examinations for radiologic and X-ray technologies to include more advanced and practical subjects with the corresponding weights of the subjects also modified. This representation believes that the importance of promoting the advancing the interests of the X-ray and radiologic technology professions because of their potential contribution to a healthier and stronger citizenry. This measure will also provide a stable and updated framework that would hone capable and competitive X-ray and radiologic technologies in the country. In view of the foregoing, through its foreign reciprocity clause, this act will also support the easier movement of Filipino X-ray and radiologic technology professionals within the ASEAN community and beyond under the various mutual recognition agreements negotiated among state parties thereto. In view of the foregoing, I hope that our colleagues will support the immediate passage of this measure. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Trillanes. Majority Leader.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to the distinguished sponsor. Mr. President, I move to suspend consideration of the said measure.
Any objection? Hearing none.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move to resume consideration on House Bill number 6114. And the status of the measure is that we are in the period of amendments, I believe, Mr. President. And we'd like to recognize the sponsor, Senator J.V. Ejercito Estrada. J.V. Ejercito. What did I say?
Senator
To
J.B.
sponsor the measure. I'm tired already, sir.
Sponsor, Senator J.B. Harris is recognized.
My apologies. Yes, yes, yes. Did you get the right one? 6114? 6114. Mr. President, the title of the measure is an act increasing the bed capacity of the Luis Hora Memorial Regional Hospital yes, is the same one? May I ask for a minute suspension, Mr. President?
Session suspended.
You have no. Yes. Oh, then, I'll recognize you. Just say that wala ka ng amendments for this one. Mr. President, ready to resume.
Session resume.
Mr. President, there are no further amendments in the said measures.
Thank you, Mr. President. We'll take this one by one. So with that, Mr. President, move to close the period of amendments on House Bill number 6114. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none.
Mr. President, I move to approve on second reading House Bill number 6114. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none.
Mr. President, I move to suspend consideration of the said measure.
Any objection? Hearing none.
With the permission of the body, we'd like to resume consideration of House Bill number 6742.
Any objection? Hearing none.
This is an act increasing the bed capacity of Zamboanga City Medical Center, Zamboanga, from 500 to 800 beds and appropriating funds therefore. We'd like to the status is in the period of amendments. We'd like to recognize the sponsor, Senator J.V. Harris.
Senator
Yes,
J.B.
Mr.
Harris.
Yes, Mr. President, there are no committee or individual amendments.
Thank you, Mr. President. With that, we move to close the period of amendments, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none.
Mr. President, I move to approve on second reading House Bill number 6742. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none.
Mr. President, did he suspend? I move to suspend consideration, Mr. President, of House Bill number 6742.
Any objection? Hearing none.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move to resume consideration on considerations on Senate Bill number, House Bill number 6621, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none.
This is the act increasing the bed capacity of Adela Serra T. Memorial Medical Center, Tandag City, province of Surigao del Sur, from 200 to 500 bed capacity. We'd like to recognize there being no members anymore to interpolate the said measure. We move to close the period of interpolation, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none.
Mr. President, move to recognize Senator J.V. Ejercito and move to open the period of committee move to open the period of amendments, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none.
Yes, Mr. President, the Committee on Health, Demography, and Finance, to which was referred to House Bill number 6621, introduced by Representatives Pichay, Pimentel, and Nograles, entitled, An Act Increasing the Bed Capacity of the Adela Serra T. Memorial Medical Center in Tandag City, province of Surigao del Sur, from 200 to 500 beds, upgrading its services and facilities, authorizing the increase of its medical personnel and appropriating funds therefore. Having considered the same, and I have the honor to report back to the Senate with the recommendation that attached House Bill number 6621 be approved with the following amendments. On page 1, lines 3 to 4, delete the phrase from 200 to 500 beds and insert a new sentence that reads, its bed capacity shall be increased incrementally as determined by the Department of Health. Thus, Section 1 as amended shall now read, Section 1, the authorized bed capacity of the Adela Sierra T Memorial Medical Center in Tandag City, province of Surigao del Sur, is hereby upgraded. Its bed capacity shall be increased incrementally as determined by the Department of Health. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none.
On page 2, lines 4 to 5, under section 4, delete the phrase from 200 to 500 beds. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none.
On the same page, line 5, after the word implemented, insert the word incrementally. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none.
On the same page, line 6, delete the phrase not more than and replace it with the phrase at least. Thus, section 4 as amended shall now read, Section 4, the increase in bed capacity of the ASTMMC shall be implemented incrementally for a period of at least 5 years from the approval of this act. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none.
On page 1, title of the bill, delete the phrase from 200 to 500 beds. The title of the bill as amended shall now read, an act increasing the bed capacity of the Adela Sierra T Memorial Medical Center in Tadag City, province of Surigao del Sur, upgrading its services and facilities, authorizing the increase of its medical personnel and appropriating funds therefore. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none.
No further amendments, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator J.B. Garsto.
Thank you, Mr. President, and there being no individual amendments as well, by our colleagues, we move to close the period of amendments, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none.
Mr. President, I move to approve on second reading House Bill number 6621. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none.
We move to suspend consideration of House Bill number 6621. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move to resume consideration Senate Bill number 1558. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none.
This is an act defining and penalizing gender-based street and public spaces harassment, expanding the definition of sexual harassment. We are in the period of interpellation, Mr. President. We'd like to move to recognize the distinguished sponsor, Senator Risa Ontiveros, and to interpellate is our distinguished Senate President, Tito Soto. I so move.
The sponsor, Senator Risa Ontiveros, is recognized, and to interpolate, the Senate President.
Thank you, Mr. President.
May I ask for 1 minute suspension, Mr. President?
Session suspended.
We are ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session resumed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the distinguished lady from Akbayan favor us with some answers to very few questions?
Very gladly, Mr. President, from the good Senate President, especially because, if I may note, this Safe Streets and Public Spaces Bill is now a priority legislation in the LEDAC. And most especially, Mr. President, because the Quezon City Safe Streets Ordinance was co-introduced by 31 councilors, including the good Senate President's son, Councilor Giancarlo Soto. So I am doubly glad to take questions from my Senate President, especially as these will surely further improve the bill, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President, for that. I almost ended my interpellation.
The good Senate President may do so, Mr. President, if he wishes.
But prudence dictates that I clarify some of the points. At the outset, Mr. President, I give my 100% support. My interpellation would more or less give us a better perspective of the intents of the bill and the contents of the bill.
I'm very
So,
confident of that, Mr. President, and thank you so much.
Thank you. The questions will be few, but there will be some predicates that I have to lay out so that we could get the better perspective of the distinguished sponsor, Mr. President. So, going to the the meat of Senate Bill 1558, one of the issues that caught my attention on the Safe Streets, Workplaces, and Public Spaces Act of 2017, which I'm sure we will be amending to 2018 soon. It's somewhat analogous with Senate Bill 1271 or the anti-discrimination bill by the sponsor also, Mr. President. Just to lay it out, no? And for you to help me, this representation, Mr. President, and this chamber to have a better understanding and a appreciation of these two measures. Can you differentiate the two, particularly in terms of making unlawful act of harassment of person because of his or her sexual orientation, which are both present in both bills, no? To cite an example so that our colleagues will be able to follow. Senate Bill 1271, it's mentioned, no, that, I quote, inciting violence and sexual abuse against any person or group on the basis of SOGI is likewise prohibited. While in Senate Bill 1558, part of the provisions of gender-based street and public places harassment talks about, quote, gender-based street and public spaces harassment is consultative of unwanted comments, gestures, and actions forced on a person in a public space without their consent and is directed at them because of their actual or perceived sex, gender, gender expression, or sexual orientation and identity. Hindi pa parang parehong-pareho.
Thank you so much for that question, Mr. President. There may be some overlaps between the two bills, but in large part, each of them is seeking to provide protection from particular actions to what may also be distinct or discrete constituencies. This Safe Streets and Public Spaces bill seeks to identify, to penalize, and therefore to prevent through behavior change, sexual harassment that happens in public spaces, including on the streets, between even complete strangers. Although the statistics show that the majority of victims of street street sexual harassment would be women, there are also a smaller number of LGBT citizens who are victimized by street and public spaces harassment, and there's also a smaller percentage of men who are victimized by street-based sexual harassment. The subject, on the other hand, of the anti-discrimination bill is the whole community of LGBT Filipinos, lesbians, gays, bisexuals, and transgenders. We may even add intersex, queer, etc., who have been victims, in the large part, victims of discrimination based on their sexual orientation and gender identity. So although, as the good Senate President pointed out, there may be some overlaps. In large part, the important distinction to make between these two bills, Mr. President, is that this bill, the Safe Streets and Public Spaces bill, invites into public rights into public spaces harassment law violations on the basis of SOGI. So the emphasis, the anti-discrimination bill is focusing on discrimination based on SOGI. The emphasis in this bill, public spaces and street harassment, is public spaces. So there are some overlaps, but there are important gaps. And in those overlaps, if I may further point out, Mr. President, there may be double discrimination that happens or double harassment that happens.
You see, my problem then would be don't you think, well, first of all, I agree with the intention of both bills, as far as this is concerned.
Thank you,
Now,
Mr.
but my
President.
problem is that there might be a confusion or difficulty in prosecution. Alin ang gagamitin? Pag parehong napasa yung bill na yan, aling bill yung charge-charge? Yung sa anti-discrimination o dito sa safe streets, workplaces, kung nag-overlap at pareho?
The two bills, Mr. President, also seek to address different gaps in Philippine law, especially where current laws only identify one set of violations or prohibited acts or others, and where current laws only penalize certain types of these prohibited acts and not all the prohibited acts more comprehensively. I'd like to point out, Mr. President, that discrimination is different from harassment. And in our appreciation of current law and our intention to improve them through these two different bills, the one we are interpolating now on safe streets and public spaces, and the other one on anti-discrimination, we are seeking to improve both. And that confidence in Philippine law continues, that there will not be confusion generated or entertained by our law enforcement authorities or by our judicial authorities when receiving a complaint, say from a woman under the Safe Streets and Public Spaces Act, or from an LGBT Filipino under the Anti-Discrimination Act. The overlap when an LGBT person is assaulted, the overlap is when an LGBT person is assaulted in public spaces. In that situation, Mr. President, the individual victim may choose one redress mechanism. Like she may also opt to file under unjust vexation or acts of lasciviousness if in her and her lawyer's appreciation, either of these two are sufficient. However, Mr. President, as the Safe Streets and Public Spaces Bill is pointing out, there are important gaps even in these laws on unjust vexation or acts of lasciviousness or other current laws protecting women, which this current Safe Streets and Public Spaces Bill is seeking to address, Mr. President.
Well, my worry is that we might be diluting one or both if we have overlaps on the contents. And anyway, so you're saying that the anti-discrimination is directly addressing the issue of LGBT.
Yes, Mr.
And
President.
this one is encompassing.
This one on
And
Safe
then-
Streets and Public Spaces seeks to provide protection, especially to the majority number of sexual harassment in public spaces victims who are women. Whereas the Anti-Discrimination Bill seeks to protect from all kinds of discrimination and not just SOGI-based sexual harassment in public spaces, but all kinds of discrimination in different spheres of human and civic life for LGBTs, Mr. President.
All right. I won't belabor that point at this point, Mr. President. Let me move on to another clarification that we seek. The charging or filing of a case to supposed perpetrators. We have to go back to the issue of the 1558, the anti-discrimination, which is, well, it has very laudable intentions, I must admit, but it may be subject to abuse, like what I brought up during the time that we were debating about it. We cannot deny the fact that it can be used to get back at someone or revenge. Ang hirap patunayan on a personal adversary. What are the safeguards that we have included in this measure in order to avoid this possible abuse?
Mr. President, the Safe Streets and Public Spaces Bill seeks to provide protection for to say a large part of our population is an understatement. At least half of all Filipinos are women. It seeks to change behavior on the part of the woman, since defining sexual harassment in public spaces as wrong would allow women to recognize our right against violence against women in public spaces. And it also seeks to change behavior on the part of men by making them recognize that street and public spaces harassment is wrong. I'd like to point out at this point, Mr. President, for example, that data from a survey in Quezon City shows that men commit sexual harassment in public spaces regardless of their natural sex drive and educational attainment. There's a further study conducted by the SWS for the UN Women Safe Streets project in Quezon City, which, as I mentioned at the start, just introduced its Safe Streets Ordinance, which shows that 3 out of 5 men admit that they have done at least one of the forms of sexual harassment at any time in their life. As in all cases of complaints, Mr. President, based on current laws, the matter of proof must be satisfied by evidence, by due process, and by redress mechanisms provided by these laws. To make it even more precise, Mr. President, under criminal law, the burden of proof is beyond reasonable doubt. And, Mr. President, in relation to the Quezon City study I just cited, this study found a marked behavior shift after the ordinance. So it achieved its primary objective. And, very importantly, Mr. President, to address the concern of the good Senate President, there have been no revenge suits. Ibig pong sabihin, Mr. President, either the complaints were found to be meritorious and therefore corrective action was instituted towards the offender by way of giving justice to the victim, or they were found not meritorious, but none were not passed upon or not decided upon because they were dismissed simply as revenge suits, Mr. President.
Well, I must agree with the sponsor, but the city that she cited as an example is a very good city.
I will
City,
not object to that
mabait
opinion
ang
of the
mga-
good Senate President. I am also a resident of that good city.
Mababait
Mr.
taga Quezon
President.
City. Now, nevertheless, again, so you cannot cite to me any safeguard in the measures
well,
itself.
Well, Mr. President, the measure itself, as I just mentioned, adopts the principle under criminal law that the burden of proof should be beyond reasonable doubt. In addition, Mr. President, as I said earlier, yes, Mr.
What part
President.
of the bill is that, Mr. President?
Well, it doesn't have to be, it's not explicitly in the bill right now, Mr. President, but since it seeks to be included in the body of criminal law of our republic, then it must and it does uphold this principle that the burden of proof must be beyond reasonable doubt. Also, under the rules of criminal procedure, Mr. President, also, this bill recognizes that the vast majority of sexual harassment in public spaces are women and the vast majority of perpetrators are men. Now, Mr. President, if men do not want to become victims of the feared, abuse or revenge suits, or in any other way to be disadvantaged, then they simply need to decide not to harass women on the streets. There are still, in that Quezon City SWS survey, there are still 2 out of every 5 men, a full 40%, who admit they have not done even one of the forms of sexual harassment ever in their life. Gusto nating palakihin yung percentage po na yon, Mr. President. And secondly, as I also mentioned earlier, the primary objective of Safe Streets, Safe Cities legislation is to educate women and men of our rights and obligations and not to penalize men. Mr. President.
All right. The bill provides for gender-based street and public spaces harassment, which is a harassment made on a person because of their actual or perceived sex, gender, gender expression, or sexual orientation and identity, like SOGI. No? Now, am I correct in saying that a person may only be held liable under this provision if the harassment was made by reason of a person's SOGI?
I tend, Mr. President, to use the term SOGI more specifically in relation to the anti-discrimination bill. But the good President is correct in pointing out that this bill on safe streets and public spaces seeks to identify and penalize, and in the very near future, hopefully prevent street and public spaces sexual harassment that is based on the victim's true or perceived sex or gender, Mr. President.
Then are we not limiting the act of harassment when it's committed on streets and public spaces by including the qualifier gender-based? Hindi
Not at
siguro
all,
baka
Mr.
pwedeng
President.
iwasan natin yun. Kasi, for instance, just as an example, in an alley, a straight guy touched the groin of another straight guy who just happened to pass by, just to vex him, or, and not because of the person's SOGI. In this bill, would the offender be held liable?
Well, Mr. President, if the person, whether woman or man, feels that she or he was violated because of his or her sex or gender, then he or she may choose to seek redress of grievance under this bill or under already existing laws, whether unjust vexation or some other law that he and his lawyer may determine is more appropriate. But this bill on safe streets and public spaces seeks to address a very real and quite widespread phenomenon of sexual harassment primarily against women, or in the largest part against women, in public spaces, including streets. 3 out of 5 women experiencing sexual harassment at least once in our lifetime is 60%. That is a large percentage, Mr. President, which law should properly and in a good way address. Also, there are existing laws, but which would exhibit important gaps in women, especially experiencing sexual harassment on streets and in public spaces, would not be able to derive redress of grievance from. For example, anti-vowsy, unjust vexation, acts of lasciviousness, anti-sexual harassment law. These are several and important laws protecting primarily women, but there are still gaps within them in terms of street sexual harassment. Mr. President, we are addressing a specific problem, sexual harassment in streets. And this is documented globally. 91% of respondents in the Stop Street Harassment Global Study said that sexual harassment in streets is a major issue. At hindi po tayo nabubukod dyan, Mr. President, with 60% of women experiencing sexual harassment at least once in their lifetime in this Quezon City study. Further, Mr. President, 58% of those harassments happened on streets, major roads, and esquinitas. 70% of these harassments occurred in broad daylight from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. So kahit po sa liwanag ng araw, hindi na po dis-oras, hindi po kadiliman, ay mayroong pa rin ganong klaseng sexual harassment on the streets, Mr. President. Also, Mr. President, yes, persons with diverse SOGI include heterosexual men and includes heterosexual men, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I need not be convinced with what the intention of the bill is.
Thank you, Mr.
I
President.
agree, but my problem is that what I'm pointing out is it might be abused. So I'm looking for safeguards so that it would not be abused. Like for example, yung sinabi ko, nagbinibiro lang, hinipuan na ganon. Will they be liable? You said yes. The answer is, I think it's no.
Mr. President, like all laws, any law may, in the hands of malicious people, be abused. We could say that of any of the laws that we have passed so
Yes,
far
that's why we need
or are
safeguards.
passing through bill. Yes, Mr. President. Therefore, but here, we presume that if the Congress of the Republic saw fit to pass all of these previous bills in our Republic's history into law, and that now we continue to consider bills addressing different concerns of our people, we are presuming regularity in the final bills that we pass into law. And further, we are presuming regularity in the way that these laws will be implemented by the executive and by our law enforcement authorities. And the possibility of abuse should not prevent us from seeking, in fact, to pass the best laws we can to provide protection to people. Let it not be said that because of our, in a way, overestimated fear about a possible abuse of this bill, that we did not take the necessary steps to protect women from this widespread phenomenon of sexual harassment on the streets. Yung pong, kunyari, yung hinipuan lang, even if that were to be the argument or the defense of a heterosexual man, I'm referring to the earlier example, Mr. President, against another heterosexual man sa isang eskinita, kung na-offend po yung isang heterosexual man, pwede po niyang ireklamo yan under acts of lasciviousness. Samantala, ang babaeng hinipuan, ang lalaki, hindi po namin yung tinatanaw na biro because that truly makes women feel unsafe. And yes, Mr. President, may I confirm what the good Senate President has pointed out. In fact, the persistent telling of sexual jokes, kahit sabihan ng nagbibiro, quote-unquote, na biro lang, the persistence in this act, kahit nagsasabi na yung babae na hindi siya komportable, hindi siya natatawa, or sinasabihan niya yung lalaki na please tigilin mo yan, ayoko yan, that is in fact defined under the bill as a light violation. It's in the definition of acts, and there are penalties prescribed, including for the first offense, a modest fine of 1,000 pesos and or community service of 8 hours, inclusive of a gender sensitivity seminar to be conducted by the Philippine National Police in coordination with the local government unit and the Philippine Commission on Women. And the PNP, Mr. President, has an important role in this bill because in the provinces, there will be anti-sexual harassment officers, or ASHI. In Metro Manila, it will be the MMDA officers. MMDA and PNP will deputize their units to be ASHI enforcers. For light to medium violations, they may arrest immediately and impose fines or community service. And these ASHI units, together with the women and children's desks of PNP stations, will keep ledgers of violators. So yes, Mr. President, yung paulit-ulit na pagsasabi ng mga sexual jokes, kahit hindi tinuturing o tinatanaw na biro ng mga biktima, ay tinutukoy po na paglabag sa panukalang ito, Mr. President.
So, let me go back to the earlier answer given by the distinguished lady.
Yes, Mr.
That
President.
there were, for me to completely understand what you're saying,
Yes, Mr. President.
you said earlier that this bill seeks to fill in the gaps
Yes, Mr. President.
of present laws.
Yes, Mr. President.
But the sample you cited, the sample that you cited precisely has that law, like acts of lasciviousness.
Yes, Mr. President. May I point
And
out the
other-
gaps that I
Ano naman eh?
referred
Ano bang
to?
gaps? What are the gaps?
Yes, Mr. President. I will be glad to share it with our colleagues. For example, Mr. President, or may I preface this answer by saying that the rationale for the adoption of this Safe Streets and Public Spaces Bill is the absence of a law that defines violence against women and other gender-based violence in public spaces. So kahit po yung tinatanong kanina ng good Senate President about SOGI-based violations, but itong bill ngayon, in public spaces ang focus. For example, Mr. President, speaking now of gaps, the Anti-Violence Against Women and Their Children Act is applicable only within a dating and sexual relationship. Samantala po sa bill na ito, isang hindi kilala sa kalsada ang pwedeng mag-sexually harass sa isang babae. The Anti-Sexual Harassment Act is...
Forgive me.
Yes,
Forgive
Mr.
me
President.
for butting in.
Yes, Mr. President.
But then, if you're saying that, then why don't we just amend the Violence Against Women Act and incorporate this?
We could do that, Mr. President, if that
and
was the
then
only
it will
law
not
with a
be
gap.
it will not be subject to abuse like what we think it might be. If it's answering the gaps. This, like for example, as you said, there is redress by using other laws that are already existing.
We could do that, Mr. President, except that, just as we say that, or the fear has been expressed that this bill could be abused or other laws could be abused, in extreme situations, someone could also say that the Anti-Vowsy Act could be abused. But as I mentioned earlier, we are presuming regularity, we are presuming good faith in all the laws that we have passed so far. We could, just for the sake of argument, Mr. President, we could simply amend one law like the Anti-Vowsy Act, except that there are several laws, which I enumerated earlier, which all have gaps in terms of addressing sexual harassment in public spaces against women, precisely in public spaces. So to continue, aside from the gap in the Anti-Vowsy Act, the Anti-Sexual Harassment Act currently is applicable only within the workplace, schools, or training centers, not in public spaces, and can only be committed by a person exercising authority, influence, or moral ascendancy. E paano nga po yung sexual harassment between isang babae at isang stranger na lalaki na hindi niya kilala on the street? Hindi pumapasok sa ganyang konteksto. Rape and sexual assault acts do not include non-physical, for example, verbal sexual assault that degrades or objectifies women. So hindi po kasama dyan yung may dadaang babae sa isang kanto, may mga taong nakatayo doon, isang barkada, halimbawa ng mga lalaki, tapos aalukin siya, mag-sex siya kasama nilang lahat. That is not covered. Unjust vexation for a fourth... ito pa, Mr. President. Fourth example, unjust vexation does not require a sexual element and is blind to gender. So dito, yung Safe Streets Bill, sana ay tutugon. Kasi sa public spaces ito applicable at mayroong gender aspect. And finally, Mr. President, acts of lasciviousness. This law would require the touching of genitalia and does not make a distinction as to whether the crime was committed in a private space or a public space. Samantala dito po sa Safe Streets and Public Spaces Bill, kahit hindi touching of genitalia, dito po sa listahan ng light, medium, and serious offenses, may iba't ibang klaseng sexual harassment and focus nga po sa public space. Additionally, Mr. President, on the Violence Against Women and Their Children Act, we can't amend VAUSI to fit the need of responding to sexual harassment on the streets because the nature of the VAUSI law precisely is intimate relationships in the context of dating or sexual relationship. So there is abuse of trust. Samantala po, sa pagitan ng babae na naglalakad sa bangketa at isang strange na lalaki, wala namang relationship of trust. In fact, ang pwede sanang i-cite at hingiin na relationship of trust would be between the woman and government by providing that cities be safe and conducive environments for women to live, to study, to work, to have our families. Yun po yung layunin ng Safe Streets and Public Spaces Bill, Mr. President.
You mentioned that unjust vexation is
Yes, Mr.
blind
President.
to gender.
Yes, Mr. President.
Hindi ba nga mas mabuting blind sa gender? So it's available to all.
Actually,
Bakit gender-based lang?
Well, Mr. President, for the simple reason, and here I recall a wonderful moment during our interpellation of that other bill, nung meron po tayong colleague na nagtanong, so ibig mong sabihin may soji ako? Because yes, every human being, lalaki man o babae, anuman ang gender natin, mayroong soji. Ang dito sa Safe Streets and Public Spaces
Can you define again
bill,
soji for us to admit that we have soji? Ano nga ba
Yes,
yung
Mr.
soji?
President, gladly. Our sexual orientation and gender identity and expression is the person's...
Sexual
Yes,
orientation,
and gender identity and
gender
expression
identity,
is the
expression.
Yes, Mr. President. SOGI is therefore the person's... Thank you, Mr. Yes. Gender identity refers to the personal sense of identity as characterized by, among others, manner of clothing, inclination, and behavior in relation to masculine or feminine conventions. A person may have a male or female identity with the physiological characteristics of the opposite sex. And, Mr. President, sexual orientation refers to the direction of emotional, sexual attraction, or conduct. This can be towards people of the, same sex, homosexual orientation, or towards people of both sexes, bisexual orientation, or towards people of the opposite sex, heterosexual orientation. And the summary of all that, in the definition, Mr. President, is that every human being has a soji. For example, I'm a straight woman, and I'm attracted to straight men. That is also a soji. And it is important that in looking at other bills, like this Safe Streets and Public Spaces bill, that in fact we be not blind to, but aware of gender. Kasi po, nagkakaroon yan ng papel sa ganitong sexual harassment dahil karamihan ng nahaharas ay babae at karamihan ng nanghaharas ay lalaki. And therefore, we address both groups of human beings and citizens in our behavior change objective, Mr. President.
It just dawned on me now that we shouldn't start calling your bill soji bill. It's just anti-discrimination bill dapat. Kasi nagkakaroon ng ibang connotation na soji, even when I hear it from other people. Akala nila pag sinabing soji, LGBT eh.
Well, Mr. President...
I think we'd better start calling your 1558 the anti-discrimination bill instead of the soji bill. It becomes, di ba?
Well, actually,
expanded anti-discrimination bill, parang ganon. Mas mabuti eh.
Although, Mr. President, we are interpolating the Safe Streets
The general
bill.
term should be gender discrimination,
Well, actually,
not soji.
I venture to step outside this current interpellation, Mr. President, to invite the good Senate President if he would like to co-author the anti-discrimination bill. In fact, it is in popular language called the SOGI Equality Bill. And I look forward to his interpellation to that next week as he committed to me, Mr. President. But having said that, it is important to, since our country is awake to matters of women and gender, including SOGI, and our country has been taking steps forward in anti-discrimination, that we bring those important lessons into our consideration of a prospective law that we hope will protect women against sexual harassment in public spaces, since it is already a very noticeable phenomenon, well documented, and exhibiting these kinds of statistics all above the 50% or half mark. 88% of these women are aged 18 to 24, so are young women. 70% of the harassers are total strangers, so there's no abuse of trust possible there because there is no relationship to begin with. Half of the women did not report the incident, while 20% of them said they were overcome with fear. Ito pong mga numero, Mr. President, they have so many faces, lives, names, primarily of women behind them, na naghuhumingi sa atin sa Kongreso ng Republika ng proteksyon. And that is what this Safe Streets and Public Spaces Bill is seeking to provide, Mr. President.
Now, okay, I'll move on.
Yes, Mr. President.
Although I must admit that the using gender-based in this particular point is Well, I'll try to understand the point of the bill when it comes to that. Let me move on to the issue of stalking.
Yes, Mr. President.
Why is the act of stalking under severe violations?
Yes,
In
Mr.
this,
President.
when, there is no direct contact being made by the offender to the offended party. Consider that the other acts that you included, enumerated under severe violations, basically involve touching. So, is it not stalking by definition is being made stealthily?
Mr. President, yes, stalking may begin stealthily, or in fact, it may begin in plain view of the victim or the intended victim. And in fact, Mr. President, stalking is a crime in many other countries, and there too has very clear definitions. Stalking is a severe violation because it's in fact, to use a maybe millennial sounding term, but very appropriate, it's one of the creepiest forms of sexual harassment against women. It may not at the start or ever involve physical contact, or it may, and it has the effect of, in a way, emotionally terrorizing the victim. It's psychologically terrorizing the victim. Because imagine being followed around the city, which is supposed to be a safe place for you, where you live, where you work, where you study, being followed around by a complete stranger, even if you are already asking him to cease and desist. Furthermore, Mr. President, yes, stalking is a violation of freedom of movement. This from the U.S. Supreme Court. So,
Kung fan.
excuse me, Mr.
Fun,
President?
You know, fans, they stalk the
That's
celebrities.
different,
Like
Mr.
Alden
President.
Richards is about a dozen stalkers.
Well, Mr. President, and the good Senate President knows better than me, the effect of a stalker against a victim in sexual harassment is very, very different from fans towards their favorite actors or singers or other artists and cultural workers. The effect of fans is to make the person who is the subject of this fandom or fanhood, I don't know the right term, to feel appreciated, to feel supported, and to feel loved. Stalking has a totally different and devastating effect on a victim. As I mentioned earlier, it can really seriously cripple a woman's freedom of movement. Further, Mr. President, speaking of the difference between fans and stalkers, we have this story about the LAPD from Teen Vogue, Mr. President. The Los Angeles Police Department having arrested a Milwaukee man for stalking Miley Cyrus. So even Miley Cyrus, one of the most popular and fanned young actors and singers in the world, she too knows the difference between a fan and a stalker.
All right,
Now,
so
the
one-
same
wha-
protection a Miley Cyrus has should be afforded Filipinas who are stalked in our
So
own
what was
country.
the penalty for the stalker of Miley Cyrus?
In this case, Mr. President, the penalty was a restraining order against the
So
stalker
why are
of
we,
Miley
bakit tayo
Cyrus.
severe violations? Bakit ano?
Here, Mr.
What did you consider when you included stalking under severe violations in that case? I'm not saying that we should not include stalking. I
Yes,
said
Mr.
we can. But bakit under severe violations?
Because
Sa states nga, restraining order lang eh.
Well, Mr. President, the reasons that I cited earlier, why stalking is already considered a severe violation is because of the effects it has on victims of stalking here in the Philippines. The Milwaukee court found that Miley Cyrus's human rights were violated. Here in the bill, rather, Mr. President, the penalties prescribed for the first offense would be punishment by arresto menor, 11 to 30 days, or a fine of 4,000 pesos provided that it includes attendance in a gender sensitivity seminar to be conducted by the PNP in coordination with the local government unit in the PCW. I also note, Mr. President, that I have been mentioning the proposed penalties, including money amounts. And in fact, Mr. President, if we are to get serious about stopping harassment in the streets, then these are apt responses. Other countries that have good anti-harassment laws, such as Singapore, for example, have far stiffer penalties. Mr. President, stalking causes harassment, alarm, and distress to the victim, and may give precedence. It may give precedence to more serious crimes,
But Mr.
such as
President,
rape.
the other offenses that you mentioned here have the same effect. It's the same effect that the victim has. Like, for example, making body gestures or exposing private parts for sexual gratification. Eh, nasa medium violations lang itong mga ito eh.
Yes, Mr.
Harassing, threatening, intimidating. Oh, medium violations lang eh.
Yes, Mr. President.
Eh, mas malala pa ito, but it gives the same effect on the victim like the effects that you mentioned about stalking. So why stalking should be under severe violation?
Yes, Mr. President. The light and medium violations, while classified as light and medium compared to severe violations like stalking, are still violations. But stalking has a different effect in that it is sustained. The light and medium violations, though they are violations, they may occur once. But stalking is sustained. And as I mentioned earlier, it may give precedence, in fact, to even more serious crimes such as rape. Additionally, Mr. President, in the cases similar to what happened to Miley Cyrus, stalking charges in California, stalking can be charged as a misdemeanor or a felony depending on the circumstances of the crime and the defendant's prior criminal history. Misdemeanor penalties can include up to a year in county jail. Dito sa atin, 11 to 30 days. Ito, up to a year in county jail and or a $1,000 fine, while felony penalties can include up to 5 years in state prison and the maximum 1,000 fine. Mukha pong kahit sa ibang jurisdictions, tinuturing na severe violation ang stalking at pinapatawan ng karampatang penalty. In fact, mas malupit pa kesa sa pine-prescribe. So, yes, Mr. President, stalking is long surveillance over stretched periods. So,
Still, Tilly,
these may be different from
secretly,
light and
Mr.
medium
President.
violations.
Secretly, di ba? Pag nalaman mo, it's a different violation already. Now, anyway, Mr. President, the majority leader is stalking me. So, I think Senator Villanueva is waiting for us. So, I will suspend my interpellation at this point, Mr. President. I will continue next week, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd just like to make a final note in relation to one of the questions earlier asked by the good Senate President, that gender-based violence recognizes the power dynamics of straight men over women and LGBTs. And additionally, Mr. President, in the same new tradition that the good Senate President and I seem to have started, beginning with the HIV/AIDS bill, I welcome amendments to further improve the bill, in particular in the Safe Streets and Public Spaces bill. Mr. President, I welcome amendments on the safeguards. And I look forward to the continuation, and as the Senate President told me yesterday, hopefully the conclusion of the interpellation next week, so that I can accept the proposed amendments of the good Senate President, that I can accept, especially on safeguards and other amendments that he will make to improve the bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Ontiveros.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, my apologies to both. I know you're going to good, focused discussion on the measure. Unfortunately, due to the lateness of the hour and the request of the minority floor leader, just kidding, the request of one of our colleagues, because he's having a birthday dinner, Mr. President, We move that we adjourn, I'm sorry, we move to suspend consideration of the said measure. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none.
Mr. President, I move that we adjourn session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Monday, August 6, 2018. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none. There being none, the session is adjourned at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Monday, 6 August 2018.